رحلة سماوية عبر عوالم البطوليات، أحلام مسلمة نكتسبها، رسم بياني عبر المجرات البعيدة، في شيء كرميز يتمه قوافل لاستكشاف الدين تجبش بالروى، اشتعلت في أميران عبر الحدود العنصرية، وانفتحت الأفق تحت القمش الأسود، تدور الأقدار السماويات، تنفجر بالفضل العالمي، وتدور القصص الخليقة، مغامر خيالي لا حدود لهم، تتكشف الأحلام اللطميات، وديس نجميات في الكون حتى تتمشى مغامرتي، يحيي مثلاحي مغامر الكون حتى تتشابك حكاياتنا الخديدة.
Diverse milde nieuws, terwijl ons krasie is op stuk. Diverse melingwanen cacheers en verzuiten, die kosmische waterval wat ons behoeft. Sterrenstelsels van verwondering wagen, hemelse escapade om te prijs. Galactische reizigers, eindeloze verhalen vereeuwigd transcendeerd. Wisselend doorgeverkeerde aura's, spanbonkieren stromen. Afscheid van die aardse sfeer, euforische verhalen herdefinieerd. Zweven die interne oneindigheid, sterfelijke lotgevallen wat ons zal vinden. Vervolging van verreizen, en die woedende sterren zoals vastgelegd. Begin met verrijkende dijk, waar ijsels ontvouw, verduisterings van goddelijke lot, waar coronale reis postvat, ontelbare inzicht betreden, waar die onbeperkte verhalen verteld wordt. Verkent 11 dimensies, waar donker geheimen ontvouw, 11 van de zitte dimensies, waar horizonnen uitbrei, ontzivering van bovenmuggen dossen, astrale reizen wat ons beveelt. Dimensionele verkennings, oneindige wijsheid bij de hand, afdalen magnetosfeer, kosmische verhalen om te verstaan. Kruis dus geen verschijnsels, waar legendes inspireren, hemelse reizen deur, heldhaftige rijken, donker dromen wat ons verkrijgt, katter.
ندعو بالصبر المتجمعات بينما نوسد برشقتي، جميع الحكمة الأكاشية في الشلال الكوني الذي نهدره، بجرات العجاب تنتظرك، مغامرة سماوية تستحق الثناء، مسافر المجرة حيث تتجاوز الحكايات التي لا نهاية لها إلى الأبد، تتقلب من خلال الحالة الثابتة، وتتدفق تيار جميلة ودايا للكرات الأرضية، يد الطير في القصص المبية، نطفو في حتى نهاية الداخليات، سنجيب مسايب بشرية، نكمل الرحلة البعيدة، في النجوم الحيجة نحن قادسنا، الشروق في مهمة كسيحة، حتى تكشف الخزي، كسوفة المسير الإلهي، حتى ترسخ الرحلة الإكليليات، دخول بصيرة لا تعاد ولا تحصى، حيث يتم سرد الحكايات التي لا حدود لها، استكشاف أحد أحارب وذن، حتى تكشف الأسرار المسلمات، الخوض في أبواب الستار، حتى تسير الفخر فكر وسط تجمعية الكروية، الرحلة النجمية التي نمر بها، استكشاف الأبواب والحكمة الحنيهية في متناول اليد، النزول إلى الخلاف المغناطيسي، حكاية كونية يجب فهمها، الإبان عبر الظواهر المنظرة، حيث تلهم الأساطير، رحلة سماوية عبر عوالم البطوليات، أحلام مسلمة نكتسبها، رسم بياني عبر المجرات البعيدة، في شيء كرميز يتمه قوافل لاستكشاف الدين تجبش بالروى، اشتعلت في أميران عبر الحدود العنصرية، وانفتحت الأفق تحت القمش الأسود، تدور الأقدار السماويات، تنفجر بالفضل العالمي، وتدور القصص الخليقة، مغامر خيالي لا حدود لهم، تتكشف الأحلام اللطمية، وديس نجميات في الكون حتى تتمشى مغامرتي، يحيي مثلاحي مغامر الكون حتى تتشابك حكاياتنا الخديدة.
Diverse milde nieuws, terwijl ons gratie is opstuk. Diverse milingwane kassiers en versuiten. Die kosmische waterval wat ons behoen. Sterrenstelsels van verwondering wagen. Hemelse escapade om te prijs. Galactische reizigers, eindeloze verhalen vereeuwigd transcendeerd. Wisselend doorgeverkeerde auras. Spanbonkieren stromen. Afscheid van die aardse sfeer. Euforische verhalen herdefinieerd. Zweven die interne oneindigheid. Sterfelijke lotgevallen wat ons zal vinden. Vervolging van verreizen. En die wordende sterren zoals vastgelegd. Begin met verrijkende dijk, waar ijsels ontvouw. Verduisterings van goddelijke lot, waar coronale reis postvat. Ontelbare inzicht betreden, waar die onbeperkte verhalen verteld wordt. Verkent 11 dimensies, waar donker geheimen ontvouw. Delfende zitten dimensies, waar horizonnen uitbrei. Ontsivering van bovenmuggen dossen, astrale reizen wat ons beveelt. Dimensionele verkennings, oneindige wijsheid bij de hand. Afdalen magnetosfeer, kosmische verhalen om te verstaan. Kruis dus geen verschijnsels, waar legendes inspireren. Hemelse reizen door heldhaftige rijken. Donker dromen wat ons verkrijgt, katter.
ندعو صبن المتجمعات بينما نوسد برشقتي يومي الحكمة لكشيتي في الشلال الكوني الذي نهدره بجرة للعجاب تنتظرك مغامرة سماوية تستحق الثناء مسافر المجرة حيث تتجاوز الحكاية التي لا نهاية لها إلى الأبد تتقلب من خلال الحالة الثابتة وتتدفق تيار جميلة وداعيا للكرة الأرضية يد الطير في القصص المبية نطفو في حتى نهاية الداخلية سنجيب مسايا بشرية نكمل الرحلة البعيدة في النجوم الحيجة نحن قادسنا الشروق في مهمة كسيحة حيث تتكشف الأخاذي كسوفة المسير الإلهي
because I forgot to unmute my mic in here as I was messing with stuff the other day. So, we are back after several weeks, and you guys just missed the recap, which I will now redo again much more quickly. In the 13 cantos up to this point, we have gone through the entrance to hell, past the three beasts, through the first six circles, and are now about to enter the seventh circle of hell. And I need to fix my OBS because I'm a pain in the ass. That being said, we will get started again, and I will add that commentary onto the end because I know we're limited on time with you, Rich. And I don't want to take up too much time doing a recap when they can just click the other episodes in the playlist. That being said, as we get started onto this particular canto, this is one of my favorite cantos because it is one of the cantos that has most persisted into the modern mythology of Christian hell. Despite it being highly non-biblical, despite the fact that no scriptural relevance it can be found to connect this to the Bible in any way, shape, or form, this particular image of hell is what most people think of and what most preachers preach from the pulpit. Even Catholic priests do this, which is funny. Well, it's funny because Catholic priests should know better. They're like, this is one of the ones that they absolutely should know better. I understand that, but a priest should know. Yeah, but a priest should know that this is non-scriptural and not preach it from the pulpit, whether he says it to it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But when he says this is the biblical hell, that's a problem. And I could show you videos of Irish Catholic priests saying exactly that. Because this is what I grew up hearing. What was this version of hell? And it was funny because I didn't learn until I read Dante that this is where it came from because I couldn't find it anywhere in the Bible. I thought I was missing something. Oh yeah, we're not starting that war. We are not starting that war. That is a war that yeah well, that is a war that will get us canceled by everybody in the nerd community that doesn't agree with whoever wins. Like that is one of those ones that if it started in the 1200s, it would have given us a crusade. Like it's silly because to me, it's all Star Wars. There's non-canonical Star Wars and canonical Star Wars. Okay, they're now branching into multiverse theory. They're only 60 years behind Marvel. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, more accurately, I would say there's an Earth 1, Earth 2, and Earth blah 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 that they just haven't established a multiversal labeling system for to delineate the different canons as opposed to apocryphal because they were canon up till like a year ago. I was slightly, yeah, I was slightly hyperbolic with a year ago, but it was until very recently they were, yeah, Yeah, but that's still almost 40 years of books that we now have to figure out which ones are canon and which ones aren't, for those of us who didn't keep up with the news at the time. Just saying. As I said, if this is started in the 1200s, there would have been a crusade. But let's get... You know, that is a question I don't know the answer to, and I hate you because I'm now going to have to find it after stream, and I already have crap to do today. Because the first freeze of the year decided to kill my battery this morning, so I got to go get that replaced. It is what it is. Okay, so we will get on to the reading since we are limited on time with Rich because of his ever so increasing class load. You need to hire coaches that inspire the parents. Oh, hold on.
And that's kind of how fast we're growing.
Okay, are you hearing everybody else now, buddy? And everybody else should be speaking now so that he can hear
you. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I'll just call him out by name. Lavitz, can you hear me? And just DM me if you can.
Yeah, we're a few seconds behind on because of delays and all that crap. And yes, because setting all this up when I was running tests, I had muted a bunch of stuff so that I could hear the monitor while I was running tests on stream. Chat. Oh, okay, there he is. I see all good in chat.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, sorry about that. Thankfully, my recap was brief, and all they did was try to get me into a Star Wars war. That being said, Canto 14 is going to be interesting, and what Rich said that you guys did not hear is that Catholic priests that should know better that this is non-scriptural still should not have an issue teaching it from the pulpit as authoritative, because Catholics believe in authoritative works outside of the Bible, which is absolutely true. Unfortunately, as I pointed out, there's some Irish Catholic priests who need to go back to seminary. Okay, so Despy, since your friend is so graciously joined. Go ahead,
to be clear,
Rich.
when we say they're authoritative, it is a level of authority that is below the authority of the scripture.
Well, I would hope that anybody of religious bent watching this would know that, and anybody of non-religious bent would just laugh at the fact that we're dealing with this at all in a church. Like, honestly.
The only thing I need from you, Jack, is a live stream on Discord so that I can see it.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to do that. Yay, getting there.
That's all I need.
Because stopping doing this for a month, you start making all kinds of mistakes like this.
Fantastic.
And let me get over here, get this open, and go till, too far, go till 18.
18? Okay. Because the charity of my native place constrained me, gathered I the scattered leaves, and gave them back to him, who now was hoarse. Then came we to the confine where disparted. The second round is from the third, and where a horrible form of justice is beheld. Clearly to manifest these novel things, I say that we arrived upon a plain, which from its bed rejecteth every plant, the dolorous forest, and a garland to it, all round about, as the sad moat to that. There close up the edge, we stayed our feet. The soil was of an arid and thick sand, not of any fashion made than that which by the feet of Cato
Cato.
Cato once was pressed. Vengeance of God, oh how much oughtest thou by each one to be dreaded, who doth read that which was manifest unto mine eyes.
Yeah, the oddest is a pain in the ass, but the funny part is I can't even blame Longfellow for that one. He's quoting the Bible. So, that being said, at least in my particular interpretation of this, the way that this always was envisioned when I read it, this is sand almost like sugar sand. Something that would have been completely alien to anybody in Asia Major or Asia Minor and most of Europe. Anywhere outside of the deepest parts of the Saharan Desert or Southern Africa or North America, you're not finding sand like, or Australia, you're not finding sand that's this fine. It's almost like powder. And the reason I came to that conclusion is because it says which by the feet of Cato. Cato was said to have walked sandstone into dust. It's why I envisioned it sand so fine it's almost like chalk.
Yeah, I would just the thing that came to mind to me was the fact that we're in this particular level of hell. If that's ground bone meal, like quite literally, bones have basically been ground to dust. Because ground bone meal would have that same texture that you're talking about.
No, it would, but I'm trying to think of the previous 6 circles and how that would have been accomplished with what was done. It's the lower hells that get to that level of brutality.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe. I don't know. That could be. It's one of those things where it's like, I didn't picture it. Now I have to kind of think about it for a bit, because that's one of those that's possible, because we have actually seen stone or caves with sand made of bone meal, because a super predator from a earlier Pleistocene age happened to use it as a den 10,000 years ago, and the bones have since been crushed up by other scavengers and blah 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 blah. So yeah, I mean, it's possible, but I just didn't think about it. That being said, this is one of these portions of Dante where he's reinforcing the justice that is these divine punishments. Even as he questions them with his human aspect, he still is being obeisant to God. Something that he never quit doing his entire life, as much as many like to say otherwise. God, everybody's quiet this morning. Get your coffee in.
I said something.
I know, but everybody else is quiet this morning. I know it's been 3 weeks and I'm screwing crap up, but that should make you laugh, not quiet.
Sorry, I've been very distracted this morning. My brain is all over the place. So,
understandable. Oh, it's just one of those, feels like a Wednesday. It's only Saturday. The new week hasn't even started yet. We're already halfway dragging.
Yep.
Ugh. Now, I'll pick up from there because everybody else has gone mute on me.
I know why you picked up this one. We all know why you picked up this one.
Yeah, but that I wasn't actually thinking about it until you said it. I literally just picked it up because everybody was quiet, but now that you see it, it seems destined. Of naked souls beheld I many herds, who all were weeping very miserably, and over them seemed set a law diverse. Supine upon the ground some folk were laying, and some were sitting all drawn up together, and others went about continually. Those who were going round were far the more, and those were less who lay down to their torment, and had their tongues more loose to lamentation. O'er all the sand waste, with the gradual fall, were raining down dilated flakes of fire, as the snow upon the Alp without a wind. As Alexander in those torrid parts of India beheld upon his host flames fall unbroken till reached the ground, whence he provided his phalanxes to trample down the soil, because the vapor better extinguished was while it single. Thus descending the eternal heat, whereby the sand was set on fire, like tinder beneath the steel, for doubling the dole. Okay, so this again is bringing in the commentary of his day. In our day, Alexander is this great hero, this person who led his hosts to victory, conquered most of the known world at the time of his doing so, so on and so forth. But in the 14th century, he was viewed on as a folly. Alexander the Great was actually used as an insult for him in certain histories written during this time period. Because what did he do? He went to India and fell to other gods.
Yeah.
He became a believer in other gods. So despite him conquering most of the known world, at this point in time, the Catholic Church and the Byzantine Church both viewed him as kind of a loser and taught it as such.
Well, I mean, that's what apostasy gets you.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying.
No, yeah. I mean, in this time period, that's what apostasy gets you.
And it shows in so. Because Alexander, despite never truly being an apostate to the Christian God, because he never knew him, gets that same level of treatment and gets cast into the seventh circle. Whereas certain Muslim individuals are in the higher circles, less punished.
Yep.
What's interesting here is, like, Alexander may not have ever known the Christian God because, well, Christianity didn't exist yet, but he almost certainly at least knew of the Jewish God, which I feel like, I'm not sure if Dante is making a commentary in that sense that the Jewish God is insufficient, or just the fact
he may be. I would argue that, well, that may be the point. In the time period of Alexander, you're talking about the transition between Judaic mysticism and Rabbinic Judaism. I don't know how that would have affected this, though. Like, I just don't. I don't know how much he would have known, etc.
It's not as if he would have been a follower of either of those. He probably would have just considered them.
Well, he wouldn't have been. But from the
religions
perspective
of
medieval Christians, a lot of people give Alexander credit for the creation of modern Christianity, right? Like,
well, the concept of it, because Paul took, because Paul's writings took from.
He's bringing in a lot of Greek ideas, and the Alexander himself sort of conquers that region and brings Greek ideas in even before Paul, that sort of get adopted and used by the early Christians.
Even though at the time they're denigrating Alexander the whole time because he fell to foreign gods.
Sure, yeah. I guess, but he's also falling from false gods, right? What what Christians consider to be false gods. So at the end of the day, he ends up, I don't know, he's instrumental in creating what we today know as Christianity.
No, I would agree. And when we're talking about the history, I was just talking about the implication of why Dante put him in Circle 7, as opposed to what Dante would have called a Mohammedan, he puts in Circle 2.
Right.
which would
Although,
have actually been somebody considered an apostate or heretic, as opposed to somebody who never knew the will of God because it predates God, or predates
well, the
the
Greeks
religion.
themselves certainly saw Alexander that way in the early days when it was happening. They were feeling betrayed.
Well,
That
the other
Alexander
thing is,
suddenly
the other thing to keep in
shifts.
mind is that Alexander, I don't think necessarily is just being punished for apostasy inside this. What is it? Inside this circle of hell. I mean, there's a lot of other things. Like there are people that like deified him just because of his like series of successes, and he may have fallen to that, thinking of himself as being some form of like
He
a
did.
supernatural being
He
Yeah,
did
I
see
mean,
himself
because
as God.
of
Yeah.
his fortune, and that could be the reason why he's here, is because he thinks of himself as godlike.
And yeah, and these all could be the case, and I'm glad you brought that up, because there are actually statues in what is now modern day Iran, that are statues of Alexander as a demigod. So
Yeah.
good, thanks for bringing that up, because while I remembered that, I did not think to bring it up.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like we could go. I don't think it's solely because of the apostasy thing. What I really think it is I think it's more along the lines of that he, what is it, believe his own
Self-deification.
legend.
Yeah,
But
self-deification.
also, like Seventh Circle is for those who commits violence against others, right? So, I mean,
Yeah,
who committed more violence at that time than Alexander against other people?
Right, but
I mean,
and I'm only going to tie this in back to what I said, is like, if you believe yourself to be a god and people are going against your will, you're more likely to kill them.
yeah, I was about to say, if we're being technical by the time period Dante's writing, that would be the Catholic Church. But he's not going to say that. So, fair enough.
Not directly.
Yeah, I mean, not directly, but by this point they have conglomerated their, or consolidated their power for 900 years. I forget Alexander's reign, but didn't he die by like 36? He was fairly young when he died. So it wasn't orders of magnitude different levels of years to implement said violence. The Catholic Church wins that battle by a long shot.
Right, but the thing is
but
that
Dante-
they did
Dante
their
criticized-
violence for their god, who was the right god.
I
And
know.
he did it for himself, thinking he was a god.
I know.
Well, beyond that, like Dante is not above criticizing the church for its follies as well.
Yeah.
So,
I know, but he wouldn't say it so blatantly as I am doing now. And for good reason, he would have been fucking killed for it back then.
We wouldn't be reading this.
Yes. Oh, that being said, the last part I want to bring up before we go on with the reading, there's a particular point to this that I think most commentators and even professors miss in this. Beneath the steel. Tinder beneath the steel has a very specific meaning in the 14th century. This is how you temper spring steel. You put tinder to do a low-level heat along an already tempered piece of steel to create spring steel, which was a new piece of technology in the 14th century in Europe. It had been known in Asia for decades at this point, if not centuries. But that is not something he would have put in accidentally. He does not phrase things on accident, ever. Especially not something so contemporarily important to the steel production, which was a major export of Florence, his hometown. Like, I don't know why this means something to me, but it seems like this is his intimation that God, not only because he double the dole, which is the Longfellow interpretation of it, the Italian wording still a form of doubling. It seems like a compounding of punishments as we go from here, because we see a level of compounding in circles 8 and 9 respectively as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like when I hear that turn of phrase, I think of a tempering of steel, right? But that can't be what he means because this is the punishment of the wicked. It's not improving anything.
Well, but what do you do to temper steel? You torture it through heat and then rapid cooling. And that's what he's talking about. The like tinder beneath the steel for doubling of the dole. It is because when you do spring steel, you are
Well,
doing
it's
a
the purpose
second
clause that
tempering
tells you
process.
that
Yeah.
it's not for its normal purpose, right? Which would
Mm-hmm.
be to improve the steel. But here we're not
Yep.
trying to improve the steel. We're just trying to double the dole. We're just
Yep.
trying to increase the suffering.
Mm-hmm. And I was just saying, and the reason that they do that is because steel is an inanimate object. If you were to put humans through a second round of tempering, it is just torture. It was why I was bringing the steel portion
Right.
up, because I think that is what Dante is intimating, and most
And
other
actually, in a lot of
commentators
ways,
don't
this is
mention
like
it.
modern understanding, right? Because it's sort of the older understanding that says suffering improves us and makes us better, like steel, right? But with Dante, he's like not saying that. He's kind of
Well,
has
he's
the
a
more
humanist.
modern understanding that suffering just is just suffering. Like it
Well,
doesn't
no,
make you,
he's a humanist. He points out it does make you stronger, but at the expense of torture.
but
Something
the
that
hell
he
are not
went through.
the denizens of hell are not supposed to get stronger. They're just supposed to be.
They are, remember, because every denizen of hell has the ability to walk out and make it to heaven. It is their contrapasso and themselves that keep them there.
Right, but that's what keeps them weak. I don't think they get stronger. I
Oh,
think that very thing that you mentioned is why they remain weak.
well, no, that is why they remain stuck. I don't think they remain weak. I think the whole point, especially when you combine the scriptural intimations with Dante's interpretation of hell, is that everybody can one day get out of hell. Hell was only changed into an
That's
eternal punishment
you just
in the
described purgatory.
13th century. Yes, and as I will have to pull out the scriptures later, but as you look at points of revelation, yes, hell is supposed to be escapable. It is just a more tormenting version of purgatory.
Yeah,
Everyone is supposed to
I
be
don't
able to
think
get out of hell
hell.
except for the fallen angels
I
and
don't think
Satan.
hell's escapable under one's own power with Dante.
It's not
I think
in Dante. That's why I'm bringing in
yeah.
scriptural intimations as well.
Oh,
And I think his humanist side is giving us that interpretation because of the wars he went through. We are able to interpret it with modern psychology, sociology, and whatnot to then further build on what he did not know.
and even physiology.
Yeah.
Yeah, but are you also using apocryphal books to come to that conclusion?
No, I'm using
About escaping hell?
Revelation specifically. No, non-apocryphal books, even though a lot of
Although to
people
be
consider
clear, apocryphal
Revelation
books
a... Go ahead.
in the 14th century were considered authoritative. Again,
Yes.
like the way we
The,
look at apocrypha today is not at all the way it was considered back then.
Right.
Absolutely not. But even then, it is modern scholarship that is called the authorship and legitimacy of Revelation into question. In the 13th century, Revelation would have been considered as true as any other book.
Yeah.
And therefore, with some of the scriptures and Revelations, I come to the conclusion
Even though
that he
Nicaea was
saw it
not
too.
very sure about it.
No, but that's a whole nother stream to get into that level of detail.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing out that because he had seen a level of hell on earth in the wars that he fought, I believe he interpreted instinctively what we now know through psychology and sociology, that yes, it makes you stronger, but it also makes you more brittle. At least that's the way I took this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because of what I know of what metalworking was like in this time period, because this is when Europeans started to rediscover spring steel, because technically they had it before this and then lost it and blah, 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 blah. They lost it in the 800s, and it got seeped back in through the Iberian, or through the Arabic and Iberian peninsulas through trade into Europe. I think it was during the
Silk
Fourth
Road.
Crusade. Well, I was going for time period rather than distance, but during the end of the Fourth Crusade, which I think is 1250-ish.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd have to look it up to be certain on the exact year, but it was middle of the 1200s. That being said, I think this is Dante trying to say both. This is he's explaining the process of giving a spring steel, which is a second heating of a blade to red hot, and then a different set of cooling processes to make it springy. But it tortures the blade. And I think that's what he's trying to express here. And commentators just skip over it. Everyone. Like, I see, like, in all the commentaries I look at, none of them even talk about this tercet at all. So, that being said, Rich, if you would like to pick up on, I think we're on 40.
At 40, hold on, let me pull it up.
Yeah, because I know you read from your spreadsheet.
Yeah. Which is incomplete at the moment, but I have all of Longfellow in here. Without repo, 40 to what?
Looks like to 57 is the help, good Vulcan help.
Okay, gotcha. Wait, to 47. Oh, wait,
57, not 47. My mistake. I misspoke. 57.
Okay. Without repose, forever was the dance of miserable hands. Now there, now here, shaking away from off them the fresh gleeds. Master, began I, who thou overcomest, all things except the demons dire that issued against us the entrance of the gate. Who is that mighty one who seems to heed not the fire and leath lowering disdainful, so that the rain seems not to ripen him? And he himself, who has become aware that I was questioning my guide about him, cried, such as I was living, am I dead? If Jove should weary out of his smith, from whom he seized in anger the sharp thunderbolt whereupon the last day I was smitten, and if he wearied out by the turns of others in Magdabello at the swarthy forge, vociferating, help, good Vulcan, help.
Okay, the reason I had you stop here is because Mongabello is a location that is important, at least historically. I didn't look at the commentaries for this one, but this is one of the finest forges in all of Italy. This is where the Roman guard around the Vatican would get their weaponry. Beyond that,
it's also worth noting that
Go ahead.
the modern name for this is Mount Etna.
Okay, Mountain of the Giants.
Yes. So it's called in the poem. Longfellow translates the swarthy forge. The Italian is La Fucina Negra, the black forge, which probably refers to the volcanic rock, and the additives they would have added to the steel to strengthen it would have also turned it darker.
Okay, and for those in the audience who are not intimately familiar with ridiculously obscure Greek mythology, Mount Etna is the equivalent of to the giants as Mount Olympus is to the gods. This is where the children of Gaia and Tartarus are rule from in the time period where they overtake the gods.
It's also worth noting that the cry, help, good Vulcan, help Vulcan would have been the Roman version of Hephaestus, the god of volcanoes and of the forge. So he's literally here asking for help from the god of the forge, while being at a forge. So
while being at a forge in hell, no less.
Yes.
So, yes, the reason I wanted to stop was the Mongabello, because of the fact that it's historically significant, and therefore I have the sneaking suspicion it was not included just because of the mythological intimation. but also because of the historical intimation. Because again, Dante never says anything just one way. That being said, as we are going through this, it dawns on me that as we go through the three Dantes that we deal with, Dante, the character in this one, seems hopelessly naive in this circle, whereas in the last circle, he actually seemed like he was grasping what was going on. Like, it seems like he's regressed, and I don't understand the implication of it.
He's going deeper into hell, right? So, like, although he may have grasped former lessons, these might be harsher lessons.
Well, yeah, but why would he seem hopelessly naive? Scared, I get. Questioning more, all these things I get. But why naive? Like, that's the part I don't get.
What I like is the fact that Dante kind of gives Virgil a bit of a backhanded compliment. He says, "Master, thou who overcomest all things except the demons dire that issued against us at the entrance of the gate." This is referring back to when they were at the city of Dis, and Virgil was unable to get them past the demons at the entrance of the city gate, and so an angel had to come down and do it for him. But like, that feels very like a backhanded compliment. It's like, you can do anything except that one thing you couldn't do.
Well, I mean, backhanded maybe, but to me it's almost like you overcame everything except for that which took the power of God. It seems like almost like an awe or a supplication of like buttering him up, like, okay, now who the fuck is that? Like, to put it into a modern, like, visual context, the simp in the buddy cop movie sucking up to the two cops, trying, see, look, those criminals over there, I'm not the bad guy, they are. Who's that? Like, that's what it feels like to me. It seems like an infantilization of Dante the character. And I don't understand why Dante the author did it, and why Dante the narrator didn't point it out.
Yeah. Also, just the on line 52, it's talking about Jove. That is a informal name for Jupiter, the Roman version of Zeus. Hence why he's talking about seizing in anger the sharp thunderbolt.
Thank you for bringing that up. I did not think to mention that, because I honestly figured anybody who got this far into us reading this bullshit would know Jove was a short version of Jupiter.
Yeah,
I know. I should have thought of it. Thank you for bringing it up.
I barely know that, only because when people refer to the moons of Jupiter, they call them the Jovian moons. So I've been able to connect that, but had I not known that, I would be like, who the fuck is Jove?
So,
and honestly, like, at first, I didn't even realize that when we were reading through it. It was like, who is Jove? And then it took me a little bit of like, oh, right, Jove is Jupiter. Because I was thinking, it's talking about Jove having seized in anger the sharp thunderbolt. I'm like, wait, is this some story of a person stealing Jupiter's thunderbolt that I didn't know about? And then I realized.
Well, yeah, before you go, Despy, I have one question to ask you, Ancom. Can you think of a particular reason why Dante, the uber-Catholic, well-being humanist, would refuse to use the title Jupiter?
Jove is very commonly used in ancient times and in medieval. I don't think that's unusual.
Yes, but the reason it was so common in these time periods is because giving a title to a foreign god was punishable by death in most counties in Europe.
Oh, fair enough.
Like, if you were to say Lord Allah, like a Muslim would, if you were not a Muslim, you're going to die. Like, there's you got to remember, we are talking about a time period where pretty much anybody who was born slightly above your station could kill you for pretty much any goddamn reason they wanted, and if you gave them a reason, they'd do it.
Chivalry, my good man.
Oh.
Chivalry.
I mean, technically this is before the code of chivalry, but still.
It's a joke.
Oh wait, no. I misspoke. After the code of chivalry, that's 13th century. We're in 14th century.
Well, no. The reason why I made the joke is because the book basically about chivalry is like 90% about how to kill people in public and not go to jail.
I mean, you're not wrong, but no, I misspoke because I was thinking hundreds, not century. No, you're absolutely right. The code of chivalry would have been 12th and 13th century, so that would have actually been something kind of intimated into 14th century Europe. Still, 100%. Like, wow. Okay.
The thing that I was going to say, and it kind of came to me, like, just thinking about like what you were talking about with like steel. I think we're looking at like the steel metaphor, or analogy, in the wrong way. When you make steel, what is it? You're basically taking iron and you have to add carbon to it. Once you add the carbon to it in the steel making process, it can never leave. It's literally stuck there. Like
no, it can leave. That's the thing.
Burned off.
Yes, if you get steel too hot, the coal burns off. What I was going to say is the carbon is constantly replenished by the bone meal you were talking about earlier. I didn't think about it as the sand.
Right, but what I was trying to get at is that you add the carbon to the steel to make the steel stronger, to make it structurally stronger. Once that carbon is added to the steel, that steel, basically holds that carbon, and then you are unable to burn it off after it's all been worked
incorporated,
in point. Right. So what I'm getting at with this is that if we look at the carbon that's going to be in there as sin, and they're at the forge, there's no way to get the sin out of the person that's stuck in the forge.
I was about to correct you, much like Ancom, I think was too, but in the 13th and 14th century, they would not have been able to get a forge hot enough to get steel hot enough to burn the carbon out. I think you may be right. Yeah, the swirl's a little less good, but the color looks great.
Yeah.
In order to burn carbon out of steel, with any sort of effectiveness, you've got to get to at least 1600 Fahrenheit.
I'm sure that they could do that for short periods of time, but maintaining it, that would probably be almost impossible. Maybe in Montebello, where like they mentioned, because Montebello had granite forges. But that's a maybe. I can't even guarantee that because we're still talking about hand and foot bellows.
Well, one thing you have to remember as well is the forges they were using were probably coal forges. And so when you are heating steel by burying it within burning carbon, you have a constant source of carbon replenishment. So even as the steel, the carbon in the steel is burning off, there is a shit ton of ionized plasma carbon available to effectively replace it. But that's also why...
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. And this is just me going more into my metallurgy nerdery. Here's the other thing that they would have known, but they wouldn't have understood why. If you over-carbonify iron, you actually make it almost useless. So, too high of carbon steel... Yeah. Well, no, I'm talking if you take steel, you add too much carbon. If the carbon content goes too high, it actually becomes worse.
Well, yeah, it becomes wrought iron. Because wrought iron is not... as the name might imply, pure iron. It is iron with a high amount of carbon, like 2 to 5%. Most carbon steels have less than 0.5% by mass of carbon. So when you go beyond about 2%, you start getting much weaker, and that's why it's typically used for less applications where the strength is less important, like wrought iron. So that's just because there's too much carbon.
Rich, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say. You said with too much carbon it gets worse, and it's just like the atmosphere. So I was gonna say
Oh, I mean, you're not
a
wrong.
little
Now-
global warming joke. Okay.
Yeah, the reason why I was drawing this analogy was just because, like, if we're talking about hell in a place where people can't leave, and if the sin is the carbon that's stuck inside the steel, then that means that, like, what is it, like, the person, no matter how they work or they're being tortured, that sin is never going to leave them.
Wait a minute. You may be right, but caveat. It may be that we have finally hit a circle that is, in Dante's opinion, inescapable.
Yeah,
And that
Could
could be what he's trying to draw the attention to.
not as inescapable as the next one's coming, but still
Yeah.
inescapable.
Well, yeah, but we finally hit one, and there,
Yeah.
where he draws the delineation point for us to look at. Could be. Because, while I know modern metallurgy, I can yank all the carbon out of steel I want. It takes me no effort whatsoever. That's because I know modern metallurgy. In the 14th century, getting something to 1600 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe one forge out of 1,000 could pull it off for an hour a day. Maybe. Like, that's just that's just me knowing the deficiency of not having a mechanical blower. Like, if they had crank blowers at this point to do bellows instead of hand or foot bellows, maybe. But those don't come in until the 15th century. So, I don't know. Like, it's just one of those things. Okay. Enough metallurgy, nerddom, and distraction. Going back to the sin. If you are right, and I think you very well may be, because as I brought up earlier, the intimation that technically all hell is escapable, Dante may be saying, no, once you get this far, you can't escape ever.
So I'm reading both where, like, kind of inside what we just read and then a little bit beyond, because it all feels like one section.
It is.
And yeah, so I'm going to start my reading from 46 just because
Okay, yeah,
like,
I'll back up.
Yeah, I'm backing up just a little bit because
No, I was
this is
backing up the
end of-
screen for
Oh,
stream.
yeah.
You're good.
Well, I'm backing up from where we've read a little bit because it starts with Dante answering the question, and the rest of this, both the next two tercets and the four beyond, are all Virgil answering the question. And so the examples being given here are just like a metaphor that Virgil is giving about Jupiter basically demanding thunderbolts be created at the forge, with the blacksmiths crying to Vulcan for help.
No, I understand. By all means, I just had to back up for the stream so that they could see what you're
No, I know.
reading.
I
That's
know.
all.
I was just explaining why I was backing up. Who is that mighty one that seems to heed not the fire, and lieth lowering and disdainful, so that the rain seems not to ripen him? And he himself, who had become aware that I was questioning my guide about him, cried, Such as I was living am I dead. If Jove should weary out his smith, from whom he seized in anger the sharp thunderbolt, wherewith upon the last day I was smitten, and if he wearied out by turns the others in Mongebello at the swarthy forge, vociferating... Oh, shit. An update to the spreadsheet just made me lose my place. One sec.
All right,
Okay.
that was me updating.
That's all right. That's right. And he... Okay. And if he wearied out by turns the others in Mongebello at the swarthy...
Constantly shifting.
Yeah. At the swarthy forge, vociferating, help, good Vulcan, help, even as he did there at the fight of Phlegra, and shot his bolts at me with all his might, he would not have thereby a joyous vengeance. Then did my leader speak with such great force that I had never heard him speak so loud. O Capaneus, in that is not extinguished thine arrogance, thou punished art the more. Not any torment, saving upon thine own rage, would be unto thy fury pain complete. Then he turned round to me with bitter lips, saying, one of the 7 kings was he who Thebes besieged and held, and seems to hold God in disdain, and little seems to prize him. I'm stopping in the middle of a tercet just because that was a... seemed to...
I'm going to be honest with you, you don't need to apologize. That's literally where I had to cut the page, because that is literally where the page ends for Longfellow, and the next clip, I had to stitch it together.
Yeah, it's just, like, the fact that he put the end of that response in the middle of it, or like at the first line of a tercet was weird, but I'm like, okay, this feels like a good stopping point regardless. Anyways, so that was just a very long way of talking about that this figure who is unbothered by the fire and the rain in this, low level of hell is... It looks to be someone named Capaneus, who I'm unfamiliar with. One of the 7 kings was he who Thebes besieged. So I'm unfamiliar with the mythological or religious history he's referring to, but like I wanted to make sure that the thought of the passage was maintained in that consistency.
Yeah, no, and I understand. It is... I'd have to look up to be sure, but he's the son of Hipponas, and I think granddaughter of Talus, but I don't remember anything else beyond his lineage, because he is in a lineage of Greek heroes. I don't remember his actual story, though.
Gotcha.
Because he is also like the great-grandfather of, I want to say, Pasiad.
I'll be right back.
Which was the pirate who was also the son of one of the goddesses. I forget her name now. Greek mythology, they're as worried about lineages as freaking modern day apostolic saints. It's fucking wild.
So this seems to be Dante is asking Virgil, yo, who's that dude over there? Virgil goes into this really long explanation about like using a shit ton of metaphor to explain how awful this guy is, such that like even if Jupiter struck Virgil down, he would not have revenge, which I don't really get. Then he goes into like he's one of the 7 kings who Thebes besieged, who hold God in disdain, and then in the next passage, he says, basically, don't mind him, let's move on. Which I find just so weird. Like, why are you putting all this energy into describing in a great amount of metaphor and simile who this guy is, only to then say, ignore him, let's go on. It's so weird.
Well, no, I get it, because in the 14th century, and having looked him up and refreshed my memory, he was one of the kings that led the war against Thebes to put Polynices back on the Theban throne. This is the story that Adrastus of Argos is the primary portion of. Capaneus is a secondary king of the 7 kings. The primary drivers were Adrastus and Hippomeda. Because Hippomedon being related to Polynices wanted Polynices on the Theban throne.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to look it up because all I remembered was him in a genealogy. And yes, he is the multi-great-grandfather of that fucking pirate who was also the daughter, or the son of the sea goddess Tiricin, who is the daughter of Triton. Gotta love Greek mythology. Way too much crap to
Yep.
remember.
Way too much.
Oh. So, this...
So I ended at line 70.
Yep, I know. I just said.
Okay, cool. Just making sure.
Okay, no, I had to move because I had to open up another window to make sure I was remembering Capaneus the right way. Because it's one of those things, I remembered the name and I remembered, like, his father. I didn't remember anything else, really. That being said, it is... As we, like, get into the oh yeah. As we get into this, it's one of these things, like in the 14th century, the Theban mythos would have been almost like their Marvel. Like, you're talking about a time period where Italians knew more about Greek mythology than they did Christian mythology, on average. And, like, that matters rather significantly when you think about it. Because this was their entertainment. Entertainment, obviously, is what hits the masses the most.
Yep.
So, like, he didn't go into greater explanation because this would have been like bringing up Captain America. You don't need to explain who Steve Rogers is.
Yeah.
At least that's my interpretation. I could be horribly, horribly wrong, but like, I don't see it.
That's actually the way I teach the Iliad in my classes, is I compare it to the MCU. Nothing makes teenage boys pay attention to the Iliad more than playing a game of who would beat who. Hector versus Sarpedon, go. And then they talk for like 30 minutes.
Hector versus Ajax.
Mm-hmm.
So on and so forth. Yeah. No, but I mean, it really is. And like, I bring in this modern interpretation because at least any of the students who end up watching this in the future, this is one of those things that you really do need to think about, because human nature, well, we have progressed a lot through the passed down, like, learning and all these other, like, great technological leaps. Human nature doesn't change that much, and what entertains us regardless, and therefore hits certain parts of emotional memory that will last regardless of anything else. So when you start thinking about somebody who can't read, and that's over 80% of the population at this point, they're going to remember the guy on the street corner who did a play about Zeus and his thunderbolt, so on and so forth, more than they paid attention to the priest in church who told them that they're going to hell because they're all evil sinners. It's a different part of the brain.
Plays that would come later, because people would remember the Passion plays.
Yes, that's 15th century, right?
Sounds right.
Yeah. So almost 2 centuries later, the church finally.
What if it was
caught on.
Dante that convinced them that they should do that kind of shit? Like, wow, that was a
maybe.
popular thing. Well, maybe we should do Passion plays.
Quite possibly. I'd have to dig into the history of that. But it's one of those things where, like, you have to think about the way not only the author was writing this and his mental capacity for knowledge of what he could possibly know in his time period, but also where his emotions would have been. This is a war veteran who basically became a humanist in a pile of bodies.
Right.
This is going to dramatically affect how he brings up those entertainment mediums of his childhood to explain social commentary. And you need to take those things into account when reading these things.
Right.
And as we have somebody who teaches the Iliad, which is even older than this, it's even harder to do so for them than it is for us.
Right.
because now we're talking about a time period where we have even less documentation about what daily life was like, and we have to rely on archaeological evidence to give us that.
I've been to Mycenae. I've been to the cave of Agamemnon. I've been to a lot of the places in the Iliad, and yet we know nothing about those places either.
We know they
We don't
exist.
even know if those locations are what they claim to be.
Well, no, we do know the Cave of Agamemnon is what they claim it is, based on that they found evidence of Greek habitation at the time period in question. Do they know for a fact it was Agamemnon? No, but
they know it's Mycenae. They know it's where he was, mythologically king of. Although even a lot of those kings are themselves made up personages, and we just don't know which which ones were real and which ones weren't.
for the most part, no. The only one that I remember that we have true archaeological evidence of was Agamemnon's brother Menelaus, who was not a fictitious character, and the only reason we have evidence of him is we have his face on a coin, which is something that was traditionally only done of living rulers at the time.
I mean, we have a golden death mask of supposedly of I don't know if it's a death mask or not, but we have a golden mask of Agamemnon.
Yeah, I don't know if that. Yeah, but I don't know if that was a death mask, because death masks. Yeah. We may not be able to tell if it was Agamemnon because we wouldn't have a comparative sample of tissue, but we definitely have tissue on the back of a death mask for the starting point.
Right.
That being said, I just know that Menelaus was on a coin, and that was traditionally only done of actual living rulers because of the way coins were minted during this time period. That being said, we don't technically know Julius Caesar existed by this metric.
Right.
If we don't include things like coins and statues. Because we don't have his body, we don't know where his tomb is, and he's one of the most famous men in Roman history.
Right.
And before any of the history and Italian nerds, Julius Caesar. I'm sorry I said it like I'm an English person.
Which just goes to tell you how long that tradition lasts, right? Because even in the 20th century, you have Kaiser Bill. Like, they continue to keep that title going for a long, long time.
Well, Kaiser Bill is slightly different because Kaiser is German for king, and Caesar was Italian for dictator.
But one comes from the other.
I'd have to check the etymology to be sure, but you're probably right.
Yes,
I just don't know.
I've looked up this etymology. Kaiser is directly descended from Caesar, as is the Russian Tsar, and a couple others that I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I said he was probably right. I just wasn't positive because it's one of those things.
I was just confirming because I am positive.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things because I've ran into words that are very similar like that before, yet they have totally different fucking etymologies. Yep. So I always want to double check. That being said, when we get into this, we do need to take into account we have more evidence for Dante Alighieri than we do most of the historical figures we put more credence in. Julius Caesar, Caesar Augustus, so on and so forth. You know, these people, we don't know where they're buried. We have no evidence that they ever existed beyond words on a page, faces on a coin, and statues. We know where Dante's buried. We could go dig his ass up right fucking now if we wanted to. Something to think about as you look into the histories of this. I get a little bit
annoyed with the historical Jesus conversations and stuff because there's so many other figures that we also don't have that kind of evidence.
This is why I'm not a mythicist. This is why I will call him an itinerant rabbi that preached apocalypse, but I will not call him a myth.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Just because I have no doubt that either he or a group of Jesuses existed and has been amalgamated into one person. There is we would have to have evidence against his existence for me to be a mythicist. And we have too
And
much
you would
evidence
expect there to
for
be
it.
people, like, with all these letters going around, you expect there to be people going like, wait, what? I lived in that time and there was no such person.
Yeah.
You know, like it would be very difficult to accept those letters if it wasn't a historical figure.
Well, yeah, and
I
like
would
I said, I mean, maybe not divine, as I'm no longer a Christian.
course.
I can accept that, but
Yep.
real. A person did walk the earth
Right.
with that name. In fact, we know of at least 24 that walked the earth with that name in his time period that we have records of.
Right.
Yeah, but we also have records of people during the time period that were quote unquote born of a virgin and had followings and were considered mystic men
Well,
that were a dime a dozen during that time period. At the
and,
same
and
time.
here's the thing: up
Which is all the more
until
evidence that he might have been real, that he probably was real
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
like he fits the profile of people who were all over the place back then. Yeah.
well, there's that, but it's also up until I think it was the late 1900s. So, like, I think it was 1970s, 1980s. We had not witnessed parthenogenesis in a mammal, aka virgin birth.
Right.
Technically, it's possible. The one thing they got wrong: Jesus would have been a woman, would have looked just like Mary, would have been Mary's clone.
Right.
So technically possible, and I believe that they may have even observed parthenogenesis in other animals like snakes and geckos and shit like that lived around this
Wait,
area.
hold on. Then how do you explain X-23?
What do you mean?
Wolverine's clone was a girl.
Because that is a fictitious thing where they did genetic
Oh.
manipulation. Parthenogenesis is an actual thing we witness in nature. That being said,
I was gonna say, yeah.
good. I was like,
All right.
I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean? That was GMO, Logan.
Really, all they had to do with X-23 was disable the SRY gene, and then she would have developed as a
or the
female.
TR1T gene, so on and so
Or
forth.
could you
There's so many
transit in the
pathways.
womb? Is that possible?
Well, no. What we're talking about is because, without going any more into this rabbit hole, I'm going to say this very quickly. Human sex and general sex
Right,
is very, very complicated. And no, what you think of as sex chromosomes are not what even determine whether you are male or female. We
I
have
know very little about this. But
yeah,
my
I know.
understanding is that there's a point at which everyone is essentially female.
Nope.
But then those who become male undergo a chemical bath at some point, at some stage.
That is an old concept that we have since moved past. That is an old progression of capitulation, or ontogeny capitulates phylogeny, which we know is slightly true but not accurately true because of the fact that we are distantly related to reptiles through the sauropsid bifurcature. You could argue that in the womb at certain points we look like a woman, like a female, but but we actually start generating external genitalia before we generate gonads. So ontogeny capitulates phylogeny is not perfectly accurate. Okay. That being said, the gene pathway to become male or female is more than 20 steps long. It's not just XY, XX, XXY. It is 20 different gene pathways that any one step being changed alters everything.
But good enough for comic books.
Yes, I just try to be very specific about this because of the certain level of bigotry that goes on about this. We teach a very rudimentary form of sex ed because we do not know an adequate way to explain this level of genetic complexity to a high schooler.
Fair enough.
And unless somebody like Despy, who's a linguist, yeah, but unless somebody like Despy, who is a linguist and a educator, were to come up with something like this, where we could actually parse this to perfectly age-appropriate language, I think we are going to have to keep teaching the shitty method at the younger ages, because I don't know how to teach it to anybody younger than, say, 16.
No, you just have to break it down into very, very simple terms. That's
Yeah,
all
I
it
don't
is.
know how to do it. That's what I mean. Take somebody like you who knows how to deal with kids that age, deal with the language changing and manipulate. I don't know how to do that. I barely know how to speak to adults. Come on.
And don't get me started about your writing.
Yeah.
I
No,
was thinking the same thing.
well, no. Here's the thing. He's giving me shit because I wrote a new intro to my cookbook, and he says this sounds like GPT wrote it, and I'm like, no, I wrote this from scratch. I can grab the notebook and show you the handwritten version, and then I put my intro into Zero GPT, and it said it was 100% AI written. So apparently, my brain's a computer.
Well,
Well, yeah, it is.
Ugh. It bothers me because I know I generated that. I hand wrote it in fucking on pencil and paper, for fuck's sake.
what we're learning,
It's like-
is that the autistic creative process is very similar to the large language model learning process.
apparently.
We can say that Jack is an AI model because it's autistic intelligence.
Okay, now, so that we don't go any more into the weeds, because let's be honest.
But that's where you catch the Pokemon.
I don't want a Caterpie. I'm not Charizard. I don't need a hat. And if anybody doesn't get that reference, go watch Pokemon Starter Squad on YouTube. Okay. Incoming Brad, back up to me. Okay, so.
My turn?
Oh yeah, Pat, you went first, not me. I'm after you. Go. We're at 79, speaking no word. And it looks like you should go to 93. Actually go to 90. Actually go to 96 just before the next spoken part, because it builds that next part good.
Okay, speaking no word, we came to where there gushes forth from the wood a little
Rivulet.
rivulet. Whose redness makes my hair still stand on end, as from the Bulicum spring and the brooklet. A sinful woman later share among them.
I think it's Bulikami, but it doesn't fucking matter. Go on. Everybody's gonna mispronounce it as they read it anyways.
So downward through the sand it went its way. The bottom of it and both sloping banks were made of stone, and the margins at the side whence I perceived that there the passage was. In all the rest which I have shown to thee, since...
Oh, you're reading off that. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. I moved it for stream.
Right. I lost where I was.
And all the rest.
I'm going to 93, that's right. Right?
Yep.
Ever shifting sands of hell.
Yeah, I just hit you with the same thing Rich did to Anton.
Okay.
We were just trying to make it more authentic, all right?
In all the rest which I have shown to thee, since we have entered in within the gates, whose threshold unto no one is denied. Nothing has been discovered by thine eyes, so notable as is the present river, which all of little dames above it quenches.
And I did say go to 96, but it's fine. We'll stop there.
Okay.
Well, no, but it's fine because that was the end. It was the end of the spoken part anyway, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay, these little dames. It is shorted. It's I believe, and I'd have to look it up to be sure. I think it means ultradames, which is Dutch for a particular type of dam that allows a certain amount of water weiring over the top. You know what a water weir is?
I do.
WEIR. Yeah, just a dam that allows a certain level of passage for irrigation.
The Beulah Kame, just FYI, is a hot spring in Viterbo, Italy.
Yeah, and I think it's Beulah Kame. I'm not positive. It's just.
It is.
Oh, okay.
Beulah
Oh,
Kame. Yeah.
yeah. It's one of those things where, unless you have a lot of Latin in your repertoire or speak Italian, you're probably gonna fuck it up. It's one of those things. It's unnatural to an English speaker.
Yep.
I'll be honest. I run into this issue with a lot of Persian words, funnily enough, that have been Romanized. Okay,
Did we get to 94 in that reading, or are we not there yet?
94 is what I'm about to start.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, if it's about 94, we should start now before we get into it. What is it you wanted to bring up about it?
Just wanted to say that Musa has one hell of a long footnote or explanation for
Oh, okay.
the passage starting with 94. So I didn't know if you wanted to
Yeah,
take that.
we'll go.
How
No,
do
we'll
you
go.
read it?
No, we'll go into the explanation first because if it's the first line and I'm going to be reading for a while, like going back to it will kind of mess with it. It'd be better to build with it. So what's
Yeah.
Moose's explanation?
Okay, so hold on. I'm just editing what I pasted into the footnote. In the middle of the sea, there lies a wasteland. The island of Crete is given as the source of Acheron Styx, and Phlegizon was joined river. This has to do with topography, which is I'm always interested in because I always want to know where I am in hell. Was probably chosen by Dante because, according to Virgil, it was the birthplace of Trojan, therefore Roman civilization. The Trojan Aeneas being the founder of Rome, Crete was also at the center of the known world in the continents of Asia and Africa and Europe. According to mythology, Mount Ida on Crete was the place chosen by Rhea to protect her infant son Jupiter from his father Saturn, who usually devoured his sons when they were born, like in most accounts. Rhea, to keep him from finding Jupiter, had her servants scream loud when he cried to drown the infant's screams. These are all quotes like from the passages. Uh, Within Mount Ida, Dante places the statue of Old Man of Crete, certainly one of the most elaborate symbols in the Inferno, with his back to Damietta and gazing towards Rome. Damietta, an important Egyptian seaport, represents the east, the pagan world, Rome, of course, the modern Christian world. The figure of the old man is drawn from the book of Daniel, but symbolism is different and more nearly reflects a poetic symbol utilized by Ovid. It's really funny to see Rome represent modernity, but anyway,
Well,
the head of gold represents the golden age of man, the arms and breast of silver, the trunk of brass, and the three declining ages of man. The clay foot may symbolize the church. The clay foot is made of terracotta, weakened and corrupted and temporal concerns of political power and struggles. Though the fissure of the cracks, fissure of the cracks, every part of the figure but the golden head flow the old man's tears, the sins and sorrows of man through all ages except the golden age of innocence. The tears before their way down through the mountain and eventually course forms from the rivers of hell, which are this is the source of the rivers of hell,
Jesus,
I guess.
no, because now I want to argue with this extremely long explanation by Musa because that's not even.
Well, I don't know if it's the source or if it's just another source.
Well, no,
But
but that's what I'm getting at. It's one of those things that he was fine, and then he just kept going. He's even more long-winded than I am, because like he was fine, and then he dug himself a hole with the last bit there. Because it's just like that's not accurate. That's your
the fissure through
interpretation.
which oh well, let me finish his incorrect thought before you tell him how incorrect he is. The fissure through which the tears of sorrow caused the fall represents an imperfection of symbolic original sin. Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
It's
well,
all on
because
94 in the spreadsheet if you want to
well,
look at it.
no, and I'll look at it a little bit, but the issue is the sources of the rivers of the underworld in this particular situation. Well, they use Rhea instead of Gaia, which I don't understand.
Well, Gaia is Greek, right? Gaia is well, actually, no. Sorry, Gaia and Rhea are two different things. Gaia was not the mother of Jupiter. Gaia was the mother of Cronus, and Cronus and Rhea were the mother of Jupiter.
Yes, but it was Gaia who protected him at the top of the mountain, not Rhea. That's why I'm pointing out. Yeah, she took her. Yeah. It's one of those things. It's little quirk, but going back to the source of the rivers is not from the tears of sorrow. The source of the rivers come from the actual inhabitants of the underworld within Tartarus, because Tartarus, both a place and an entity, the place where you were sent to be damned in the Greek underworld, is the living body of a god.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't think he's saying that this is the source of the rivers, just that this is a contributing source to the rivers.
I know, it's just the way he worded it. Sorry, it bugs me when people do that, because
it should be noted, this isn't entirely Musa's fault, because as I'm reading through Dante, he is making a lot of these claims.
I know.
Like Rhea protecting.
I know. Which is why I didn't want to argue too much. I was just like, that's why I focused on the topography as opposed to the person. Because, like,
yeah, I do think, a translator's duty is to view the poet as the ultimate authority, even if the poet makes mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You go with the poet's interpretation over.
And then you put a footnote. Here's why he's wrong.
In original Greek mythology, it would have been this, but this is how Dante views
it. And it's also worth noting that Dante is also the source of the mistake in the topology. He's the one claiming the rivers Acheron, Phlegethon, and Styx originate in Crete.
I thought you'll have to check the Italian. I thought he says originate, meaning to converge into one in that area, as opposed to originate as in source of spring.
No. He's saying that Acheron, Styx, and Phlegethon they fall into the valley from Crete, at which point they combine together to form Cocytus.
Okay, yeah, it's not technically talking about their origin, it's talking about where they're passing from or to. I can forgive that slightly then, because that's something that he wouldn't have known the difference of either, and he kept it ambiguous.
I kind of feel like this Lethe gets mentioned later. We really needed to have Lethe here today.
He's been invited, he just doesn't show up. He doesn't want to get up this fucking early.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for him, that's understandable.
He would have to be up from last night.
Well, on a Saturday, that's something he can do. He doesn't work on Saturdays like you do. But I understand. No, and I've invited him for that specific reason, so I'm with you.
Right. We need to pre-record.
You have to get up at 5 a.m. No one wants to get up at 5 on a Saturday when they don't got work.
Hey, you don't go fishing, do you? I'll get up at 5 a.m. to go fishing any day of the week.
There's that too.
That is part of the reason I do not enjoy fishing. I don't want to get up early enough to have a good catch. Fuck that.
You don't technically have to. It's just tradition. That being said, getting back to the reading. These words are of my...
Hey, hold on. This is Dante, right? So this is Christianity. Jesus was the fisher of men.
Well, at least we're back on point.
Okay.
I can't tell now.
These
we're not making gay jokes, are we? Because we
hopefully
shouldn't be doing that.
Interpret that how you will. Right?
I mean, like honestly, like that's the one thing I really, as much as I will like shit on Christianity and the harms they have done, no, like at least from what we know of the apocryphal books, etc., Jesus married Mary Magdalene. Like, I have no issue with this. Like, Christians have a big fucking issue with it, but hence why they removed it from their holy book. But
you'll have to tell me where the evidence is for that.
It's in apocryphal books. It's not evidence, it's claims. That's why I don't ever call it
It's
evidence.
in an apocryphal book written by Dan Brown, okay?
No, it's Dan Brown Dan Brown popularized it, but he is talking about particular apocryphal books where it is intimated that Mary Magdalene was the companion of the Savior. And in the time period that the book was written, companion literally meant spouse, which was used in the movie, but that is actually an interpretation from real biblical scholars. So it wasn't built on bullshit. The rest of the movie was, but it wasn't built on bullshit.
Yeah, fair enough. I can imagine Dan Brown like becoming a traditional authority, like by some like offshoot of the church in the like
Some
centuries
offshoot
from
of Opus Dei.
yeah. Well, not Opus Dei, but
Well, no, because he talks about Opus Dei more than anything else in the first book.
Like
Well,
nobody knew
not
who Opus
approvingly.
Dei was before he released his books. Like that
Yeah.
was just like off everybody's
knew.
radar.
Yeah,
Well,
only
yeah,
Catholics
no,
knew.
But I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you, but the reason I bring it up is because that is a word that is chosen and used in one of the apocryphal books. Does that actually mean that they were married? No, but it's a claim that was made in one of the books, just like any of the other claims. We have zero fucking evidence for it.
Well, I read that book actually to my great shame. I did read that book, and I think what he said was that they were like, because it's just
It's
some pop culture
apocryphal.
bubblegum book. Like, no. It wasn't that he was like. I love
be right
the
back.
movie Dogma, for instance. Like, I have no problem with books that are heretical. It's just that it was just this sort of pop culture phenomenon book that was kind of cheaply done. It wasn't exactly intellectual fare, but anyway, I did read it, and as I recall, a lot of his claims, obviously he's not making this claim for real, but a lot of his claims were about these suppressed books that he sort of made up for the purposes of the story. That were destroyed by the church or whatever, but there was evidence of still, and so that's what he goes into. But it's not real works that he's citing there; it's just stuff that he made up for the purpose of the story. Which
he made up the titles of the books and the secondary rest of the content.
Yeah.
The one thing he took from a scholarly work was companion means spouse in the time period, and that word was used. That's the only thing that had any scholarly backing. The rest of that movie is complete and utter bupkis.
Well, it's the same thing with James the brother, right? The word for people say, "Aha, Mary."
James the brother of Jesus, yeah.
Right, which means Mary did not remain a virgin because she went on to have more kids, and those were not divinely impregnated. And so, but all of that relies on the fact that the word for brother can also mean cousin or very close friend.
Well, the other, you're right on that. But the other thing to take into account, the title James the brother comes from a particular section of books that we question the authorship of. So we don't even know if that's what he was called.
Right.
Like that's the other aspect. It could have been something added later, like the names on the top of the Gospels.
Right.
Like that's something to take into account that most people don't really get into. And here's the thing, I wouldn't call it shameful. I love the book series Animorphs. It's a fucking kid series that my kids read. It's actually really well done for what it is.
Well, there's more to the shameful thing than that. Here's what was shameful about it, is that it has certain mystery novel devices in it that are things that authors use all the time. And I fell for each one of them. I read it cover to cover, could not even take a break to eat lunch or something. I just couldn't do it because it pulled me along so expertly, right? But I knew all of these tropes. I knew that it was supposed to do that. It's the kind of thing that keeps you fast forwarding through the commercials, in a.
You're the guy who gets ashamed if you fall for the magic trick, aren't you?
No. In fact, I wanted to remain. I'm the one who doesn't want an explanation because I want to remain a mystery.
Yeah, fair. For me, that should not shameful.
Surprise you about
if an author, even if I know that they're using a trick, if that trick still pulls me in knowingly, they used it fucking well, man. They were able to show me the pee getting removed from the third cup, and I still looked for it.
Listen, the dude is a multi-millionaire for a reason. He is good at what he does. I'm just saying, like, basically, I fell for all of his tricks.
And I wouldn't call it shameful. I would give that guy credit for being an excellent author. Now, would I call him an author for all time? Nah. I honestly don't think that he will survive the test of time, like you intimated with your joke about him being an authority in the church.
No, I agree.
But
it won't be. Yeah.
But I do see a lot of his influence.
If any mystery writer deserves to have those accolades, it's going to be Dorothy Sayers. All right.
Well, true. But what I was going to point to is what I see from Brown's influence is now when people put religion into their books, they actually bring in the scholarly research to try and do shit if they're non-religious and biased and things like that. They actually try to bring it in to where they try to make it as faithful as they can because of how badly even somebody as great as Brown got panned for fucking shit up.
Right.
By the way, the other thing that we can discount for anybody who's still watching at this point who hasn't just said fuck this tangent,
that happened like in episode 1, okay?
Well, no, but this tangent in specific bothers people.
If we're talking mystery writers, I think Agatha Christie will outlive Sayers.
Obviously she has already.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just talking about who deserves it. She's a phenomenal writer, but
Yeah, I don't think his books will survive, but I think his legacy of trying to be more scholarly accurate when putting religion into books so that you don't get panned for it, I think he is the one who set that tone, because before him, they were fucking horrible, dude. Like, you remember religious books before that? They were god-awful. Like, if anything went anywhere near religion, you wanted to run away screaming. Because you knew they were going to fuck it up. You knew it. It was the gold standard to fuck it up.
Right.
And then he made one that was so fucked up, but popular, that people were like, okay, if we're going to be popular, we can't make that mistake ever again.
Right. By the way, we skipped by something that I didn't notice as we were doing it before, but on there's also a footnote on 15. Cato's feet packed down in other times. And there's a reference here, at least by Musa, to Scipio Africanus. And I know it's Scipio, but I love to say Scipio. Sounds more fun. Which is one of my favorites, because like Cincinnatus, he's one of the few leaders who were given ultimate power and yet retired after a certain amount of time and did not seek lifelong power.
Yeah, well, at least according to the legend.
Rich, we do know that you spend a lot of time with Gen Alpha. And
that is
the
true.
Scipio might be your skibbity. Just so you know.
Ooh, I might use that actually in class.
Oh God!
Punishment for saying skibbity is you have to give a speech about Scipio.
Oh Lord. Okay, back to the reading. These words were of my leader, whence I prayed him that he would give me my largesse of the food, for which he had given me largesse of desire. In the mid-sea there sits a wasted land, said he thereafterward, whose name is Crete, under whose king the world of old was chased. There is a mountain there that once glad with waters and with leaves, which was called Ida. Now 'tis deserted, as a thing worn out. Rhea once chose it as the faithful cradle, her own son to conceal him better whenever he cried. She there had clamors made. A grand old man stands in the mountain erect, who holds his shoulders turned towards Dalmatia, and looks at Rome as if it were his mirror. His head is fashioned of refined gold and of pure silver of arms and breasts, and he is brass as far down as the fork. From that point downward, all is chosen iron, save for the right foot of kiln-baked clay, and more he stands on that one than the other. Each part except the gold is by fissure asunder cleft, that dripping with tears which gathered together perforate the cavern. From rock to rock, From rock to rock they fall into this valley. Acheron, Styx, and Phlegethon they form. Then downward go along the narrowed sluice. On to the point where there is no more descending, they form Cocytus. What that pool may be, thou shalt behold. So here 'tis not narrated. Okay, so the only thing that gets wrong, at least in my opinion, from what I understand of the actual topology of the Greek underworld, this would be the convergence point of these three rivers, not the formation point. And yes, Talus's tears do enter the river, which is what caused the divergence for the Cocytus and Lethe and Hecacorindus later. Because of their dripping, they created a stalagmite that later diverted the river. That is the way I remember it from the myths. That being said, those myths would not have been known to Dante, so I cannot be that pedantic for somebody who would not have had access to this for another 150 years.
Yeah, and again, like the footnote is based on what Dante meant, not what the original myths meant. Yeah. Yeah,
and so like I can get a little irritated about it with Musa for not adding that it was incorrect. I can also understand why he did it. I just wish we were a little bit more accurate, because the more things that we teach incorrectly, the more things we have to unteach later, and it drives me insane. That's why I never want to say something concrete unless I'm like, oh yeah, here's the scholarly article to back me up. That being said, the way that they're talking about here, in my opinion, Dante missed a trick, and this is something that he would known about. The cascading waterfalls of these three rivers are also significant within the myths and would have been perfect for the analogies of the seventh circle, in my opinion. Because the waterfalls of each one of the places that are one of the things that is said about them, the place each one is diverted is a body that has been stuck to a spiky rock, essentially. So the reason it diverts one way or diverts another is some soul that's stuck there. And that would have been a perfect visual image to do for what he's doing here, especially when you now factor in the Phlegethon is a river of fire, and they're all being rained on by fire.
Right.
So it would then also create a greater juxtaposition of where that fiery rain was coming from. And what I find funny is it shouldn't even be called fiery rain, because when you look at the other way it was defined, flakes of fire, it's fire snow. Think about that horror.
A forge.
Yeah, but think about that. But I mean, you live in north enough in Japan where you get flurries and stuff every winter. Think about all of those flurries being fire.
Also, do you remember, has anybody seen the, what is it, the castle, you know what I'm talking about, the alternate history Nazi series.
Man on High Castle.
Man on High Castle, right, the TV show adaptation of it. There was
I have not seen the show, but I read the books.
Okay, there's a scene where they're standing in the snow, but then you find out a little bit further into the scene that it's not snow. It's
ash.
There's a crematorium nearby.
And it's ash.
Yeah. So some of that snow was on fire still because it's coming from. So I think that's another possibility.
Well, what I was thinking, although that's a great image to bring up too, I was thinking the edges of a forest fire. The ash that's in the air that's also still smoldering. It's terrifying. Mm-hmm. Like, I've been in a couple of like forest fires. They're fucking terrifying, man.
Honestly, it's probably both. We know there's trees in hell. Mm-hmm. And we know there's embodied people in hell. So, Yeah.
So
it could be both.
Go ahead, Despy.
I just put like 2 and 2 together. So we're in the section of hell with the blasphemers, correct?
Yes.
What do you need to do in order to blaspheme?
In 14th century understanding,
yes.
Pretty much everything.
Yes. No, but I mean,
sorry, I couldn't pass up the joke.
the main component of blaspheming is basically like speaking
Deni-
ill will of
God,
But-
or denying the divinity of one of the triune. Yes.
right. So when you speak this ill will, what comes out of your mouth? Breath, right? Airflow.
Well, in
Exactly
14th
how
century,
do
they
you-
still believe
exact-
spirit, but yes.
Exactly how do you raise the temperature in a forge?
Bellows, yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean,
So this is
that
this
could
is
be
your-
us drawing that juxtaposition, although you
Right.
could be right.
Yeah, but death of the author, it's legitimate.
But
Yeah.
but here's the thing, like if this is the reason, then they're causing their own hell by doing this because
And that is
they're
a theme
basically-
throughout. Yeah.
Well, I
they're
mean,
basically
yeah.
fueling they're making the forge hotter by blaspheming.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Although, the one thing I will point out, technically not even speaking ill will of God. It has to be a very particular thing of God, of rebuking or casting out. Like, this modern interpretation of saying, God damn, no, that's not blasphemy, that's not taking the Lord's name in vain, saying Jesus Christ as you
Well,
stub your toe.
it is taking the Lord's name in vain, right?
No,
Like,
because when you go by the original interpretation of the way that scripture reads, it means to swear by God and then lie. That is what taking the Lord's name in vain means. By
but
scripture.
in vain literally means like uselessly, right? Like,
But
God's
that's
not going to
because of
actually
the-
damn the thing that you want to damn.
Well, no, well, it's that is not the original interpretation. In fact, to damn something by God, whether God would ever actually damn that thing was immaterial, is a staple of the church and is not actually condemned. It originally, scripturally, it means to swear by God and then lie.
Sure.
We added it with the Puritan culture of the 17th and 18th century, all of the rest of that crap that's taking the Lord's name in vain. It was not viewed that way before the 17th century.
Yeah, but it's a reasonable interpretation, right? Like,
No, not in my
if
opinion.
if you're invoking the name of God in a way that God will not respond to, then it's literally in vain. It's like a useless invocation.
By the modern interpretation of it, of the word vain,
Even
yes.
by some ancient ones, like in terms of like the invocation of the muses. Like if you're invoking the muses and then you write a bad poem or a shitty poem, you're literally, that invocation is in vain.
No.
Or at least that's the way it was presented in like when I
Yeah,
was
and I
personally
understand that, but you have to remember the original way that this is worded. It is not talking about vanity in the same way that we view vanity today. Vanity today has very much socially morphed from what it was viewed, especially in the first century.
What was the definition of vanity back then?
Vanity back then was to hold oneself above divinity. It had nothing to do with caring about your appearance. To put it into a Greek mythological term, the reason that Andromeda had to be sacrificed was because her mother called her more beautiful than Aphrodite.
Of course,
That would be
yeah.
in vain. It has nothing to do with your own vanity as we understand it today. It had to do with specifically veining the god or gods when you go back.
So what if
far
you
enough.
loved yourself so much you turned into a flower and stared at yourself for all eternity?
You mean
Is that vanity?
narcissus? I would argue that's narcissism, but that's also my modern interpretation. By their interpretation, yes, that would have been vanity. And that would have been his punishment for his vanity. Because he considered himself more important than all the rest of the world and the gods.
Okay, fair enough.
At least by the old interpretation of the word. And that's why I stress it enough, because it is modern puritanical culture that led to all this other crap of,
But
if you
is it-
say
okay.
Jesus Christ when you stub your toe, that's
But
blasphemy.
you can link those things though, right? You could say that if you are
I can.
invoking the name of God to damn something, right? then you are putting yourself in the place of God, because it's God's place to damn something. It's not it's not your place to use God's power.
Except for God didn't damn David for saying those exact things.
Well, there's a lot of things he did though that were sinful.
But my point
that
is,
he
it
forgave.
was not blasphemy, the unforgivable sin. So this is my point. That is not blasphemy by scriptural interpretation. Modern dogmatic interpretation changed it.
All right, fair enough.
And I can
But
point
which one would Dante recognize?
the original, because it didn't change until 1611. What happened in 1611, Rich?
I don't know.
AE
of things.
1611
AE 20 or AE 1611.
is the original King James Bible,
Oh, okay.
and that's when it changed.
I'm honestly a little surprised you didn't know that, Rich.
He didn't know it off the top of his head because I asked the year rather than what would be the significance of the King
Well, I
James
mean, it's
Bible
just that
on
when you
this.
said 1611, like 5 things popped in my head
Yeah.
that you could be talking about. One of which was Shakespearean, but
Yes. Which, by the way, also comes into play, which is, but 1611, the King James Bible, more specifically
Right.
the authorized edition, 1611 comes out and starts pushing this more broadened version of blasphemy and vainglorious behavior. That being said, and
Okay.
we
By the way,
know,
everything's in the spreadsheet now,
awesome.
including Musa's footnotes, but I don't have Sayer's footnotes yet.
Okay. That being said, I believe we were on to Ancom.
All right.
And
I'm guessing I'm just going to go through the end.
Yep. And I won't edit the spreadsheet while you're reading.
Oh,
Well-
I switched to the Dartmouth copy.
Okay. That I will.
So where I stopped, because these are not lining up correctly, I don't know if that's the right number. I stopped, thou shalt behold, so here's 'tis not narrated. The next line is where we're picking up.
If so, the
What-
present. Yeah.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, gotta get rid of that white line. I might give the last spoken, last tercet, and final line to Rich, just because I think it'll be fun to close it out with him on that speech.
Okay.
So since we're missing Lethe.
That's right.
Well, thou shalt see Lethe, as the poem says.
Yeah.
Anyways. And I to him, if so the present runnel doth take its rise in this way from our world, why only on this verge appears it to us? And he to me, thou knowest this place is round, and notwithstanding thou hast journeyed far, still to the left descending to the bottom. Thou hast not yet through all the circle turned. Therefore, if something new appear to us, it should not bring amazement to thy face. And I again, Master, where shalt be found Lethe and Phlegethon? For of one thou art silent, and sayest the other of this reign is made. In all thy questions, truly thou dost please me, replied he. But the boiling of the red water might well solve one of them thou makest. Thou shalt see Lethe, but outside this moat, where the souls repair to lave themselves, when sin repented of has been removed.
Okay, and the reason I actually wanted you to stop here, besides with allowing Rich to close out with the final lines, is because of the way that this is described. This is a mistake, by the way, Dante makes it. It's not a Longfellow or anybody else's issue. The red water. This is his misunderstanding that he should have known better on. He should have known that it was literally a river of fire. There is no liquid there. It's not liquid fire. It is not red water. It is fire that you have to drink. You have to literally cup fire in your hand and pull it to your mouth and attempt to swallow it to gain any form of sustenance against thirst in all of the underworld. It is the only way to drink in the underworld. Even if you were to bring water with you, it would not quench you. And he should know this because the story where he's drawing the story from the Phlegethon is where this is explained. Small point that I push against Dante on, because he should have known better, or should have said better if he did know better. And Rich, then we can close out with Virgil's final line.
Okay, give me the number.
The final tercet and final line.
Final, in this case,
141.
The last 4 lines.
No, because
Okay.
those numbers are wrong. It's 139 to 142.
Yeah. Then said he, "It is time to now abandon the wood. Take heed that thou come after me. Away the margins make that are not burning, and over them all vapors are extinguished."
Yeah. Okay. So, and the reason I wanted you to close out is because Virgil's your hero as much as Dante.
One of them.
So, that being said, this is highly important. Now that we can go back and think about this whole thing as opposed to just talking about the small mistake that Dante made that irks me to no end because of my autism. The Lethe is a river that most people know very little of. And this is why we wanted our friend here.
They forgot it.
I was about to make that exact same joke.
But our friend, the Lethe Walter Kai, bears this in his screen name for his stuff. Wished for him to be here for this. But this is the river that the wise drinks only enough to forget their past but remember their wisdom.
Yep, that's
The
Plato.
foolish drink so much that they forget everything.
That's from the Republic at the end.
Yes, and this also comes from Plato is not directly quoting, but very closely paraphrasing the original legend of crossing the Lethe from Greek legend, because you have to cross the Lethe to exit the underworld. The trick is to only drink as much as is vitally necessary to get across, because otherwise you're lost forever.
Yeah.
That's an important thing to the humanism of Dante, and funnily enough, at this point, the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church also teaches us at this point in time that there is a certain level of forgetting that is necessary to heal. And it's a misappropriation of the word, because it's not forgetting. It is willfully letting go of, which is a slightly different aspect to this. But it is still what they are implying by this intonation.
Right.
That letting go is part of the healing process. And Dante, when he's writing this particular section, is very recently left battlefields where he left friends and enemies alike in the field bloody. Like, he understands that you have to let a certain amount go, or you end up like the crazy veterans of his time period who were literally going around becoming brigands and trying to kill their kings because they lost their mind and were like animals. Look up the Florentine wolves in your history books for that one.
Speaking of Lethe and forgetting, there's some irony here, because the link that I had for Sayer's footnotes, I did through the Wayback Machine. That way, if it ever expired, it'd still be there on the Wayback Machine. But it has now been excluded from the Wayback Machine, which I didn't know was possible. So apparently you can make requests for the Wayback Machine to delete your old pages or whatever. So
Well,
now
because
I
it's
no
an
longer...
archiving, because it's an archiving service, not a database service, and therefore they are beholden to copyright law.
Yeah, so anyway, it's deleted now, which means that the Wayback Machine has officially forgotten Lethe.
Which is ironic. That being said, there's probably another copy on Internet Archive Wayback Machine.
No,
You just have
I'm
to
now
put a new
using
link.
the one that I think Ancom found us a while back,
Yeah.
which is just as good. I just think it's funny that the Wayback Machine forgot it.
Okay.
Are you talking about? Wait. Are you talking about the Wayback Machine or the Internet Archive? The Wayback Machine is part of that, but like the Internet Archive also has archives of other things that are not just web pages.
But they are.
I use the Wayback Machine, so there might be other parts of the Internet Archives that I haven't accessed.
But they are an archive service. If they are requested, all copyrighted materials that still are not in public domain must be removed. They're not a database
So-
server where they can get around that.
So you're saying they removed the Sayers copy that we
They
had been
they,
using?
m- they may
Exactly.
have, but they can kiss my
Oh.
ass. I downloaded it.
Yeah.
I know, but for the world, like it's important to have one repository somewhere where you can.
We do.
I'm a little bit worried about some 1984 world where there's no trace of like past writings.
No,
and
you
so you
don't
can
have to
make up
worry
whatever you
about
want.
that. You just
We're
don't
gonna
use
make.
the
Well,
research.
how about we just make one for ourselves? We'll call it the Library of Alexandria. Okay.
There you go.
Well, what I was going to point out is technically all of these are available for free. It's just harder to get, and it's a much more cumbersome service. You can get all of this through the Library of Congress.
We could even get Elon Musk to work the servers for us.
Because that is a database service, not an archive service, and therefore is not subject to copyright law. It's because of the way the laws are set up. There's other companies that do this that are database services. They just charge you. Library of Congress doesn't charge you.
Elon is precisely
He's-
the person that I'm thinking of when I consider like
When
that
you-
kind of misinformation.
Well, no, he's the type of person I think of when we want to name
I don't think it was deleted.
the
I think
repository, the Library of Alexandria.
It may have been deleted from that current link,
no,
and therefore
no.
now
I'm
has a
saying
new
the Internet
URL.
Archive is currently down. That's the problem. Like, just their whole website, archive.org,
Oh.
is currently giving a service availability error. So it's not that the book itself was removed necessarily.
Yeah.
It's just that currently the Internet Archive is down.
Fair enough.
Okay. Well, that would make me feel better if that's all it was. But it made it sound like the language made it sound like.
Well, I know that they have removed certain things, like when like brand new books that just hit the shelves get put there, they request to be removed, and they're removed. I think for 10 years, you're not allowed to upload them for a certain amount of time, because otherwise you never have to pay for a book. Authors would never make any
I
money.
prefer Ancom's explanation. That's the reality in which I prefer to live. So that's what I'm.
Well, I mean, we know you're a fan of progressive revelation, so that tracks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
The reason I say that is because when I search Divine Comedy Sayers, two different links from archive.org come up, but when I click on either of them or I just try to go to archive.org directly, I get an error saying it's currently down.
Yeah,
So
I had
think
Googled
that's
it
all is.
myself, and I didn't click. And when I saw the two links, that's why I thought maybe the original URL got deleted and it was moved to a new server. So you just need to change the URL. But now that it's down, that makes way more sense. That being said, we got through this one way quicker than expected.
Yeah.
This one felt shorter.
It's really not. Some of the ones we have done before that have taken us 3 hours were 131.
Yeah.
This was 142.
But some of the ones that we've done before got us so far into the weeds that we were arguing Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, I know, which is why every time we went on to a complete ridiculous tangent, I was like, hold on, bring us back. But at least keep it
Right.
somewhat related. We're getting better.
What I'm just saying is that this time we didn't have as many ridiculous tangents as we had before.
Well, we had them. We just reined them in before they got out of hand.
Right. That's what I'm getting at.
We're getting better.
Well, the thing is we don't technically need to get better. We have better viewership on the older ones, just so you know, where we went on more tangents. So that's better for viewership, but less good for communicating the information we need to. So it is what it is. We'll have to find a happy medium. That being said, Canto 4 now in the books, or 14 now in the books. This one, if you have been following along with us, chat, it is one of the ones that really doesn't have anything controversial. Needs a little bit of explanation unless you're uber history nerds or uber religious nerds like some of us here. But like overall, none of it's going to be unfamiliar drastically because how much this one canto has been expressed through the rest of hell as we understand it today. So much so that I recently was in a discussion with a young Earth creationist Muslim, And they use this version of hell when talking about Shaitan, with the raining embers and whatnot, which is not in the Quran.
By the way, like Sayers has a pretty good footnote on Alexander that does, I think, what you said you wanted Musa to do, which is explain the sort of intermediate interpretations. She says Dante seems to have taken the story about Alexander from Albertus Magnus, who in turn took it, with certain alterations, from the spurious letter of Alexander to Aristotle about the marvels of the Indies. So there you go. Multiple reasons to doubt the source material.
Well, there's a lot of it. Here's the thing. As we are learning about this, right now we are teaching you the history, the theology, the religiosity, and the literature. This is not just a one caveat system that we're working on here. When you are being taught these things, we're teaching you all this stuff because I don't know what class you're taking that's teaching you this, because there's several that use this. That's why I try to bring, and thankfully these three show up, consistently, people who also have like interdisciplinary backgrounds, who also are very invested in understanding and transferring information to the next generation, because it doesn't matter if this person's real. It doesn't matter if that letter was real. You're going to be questioned on it. You're going to be taught on it, and therefore you need to learn about it. As long as you are not teaching this as this is dyed in the wool, this is history, that we have evidence for it, then you're wrong. But if you're saying this is what we're taught about the history because this is what the claims are, now you're right. You learn the things about what we don't know so that you can understand what we do know and extrapolate and learn more than our predecessors did. That is the only way we progress as a society and further academia as a whole. We need to focus on interdisciplinary stuff like this because it's helpful. Because, like, for example, who the fuck knew that Montebello was an actual forge until looking into the history? Because there's mythological Montebello, and then there's real Montebello. Because sometimes you name a place after a myth. Sometimes the myth is named after a real place. Sometimes it's both. Which is really weird, by the way. Well, when we get into Purgatorio and start talking about some of the Near East locations, we can get into some of that.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of a myth and a real place cross-informing one another is not all that surprising, especially when you think about the speed at which information traveled in this day, right? So you might, someone might hear about a place, maybe someone visits a place and then goes and writes about it, but maybe they embellish something and, that gets sent to someone else who maybe misunderstands or embellishes a little bit more, and then you have this kind of cross back and forth of myth informing the information about the place and information about the place informing the myth.
The city of Tunis comes to mind. That doesn't connect to Dante, but does connect to what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. I don't know much about the city of Tunis, but yeah.
We know it's a real place.
From? It's not.
It is a city of legend that we now know exists. Know that all the maps had it wrong and all the legends had it wrong, but it was a city that existed that became essentially steeped in legend because it was lost to the sands of the desert. The thing is, it was a city that only existed for about 3 generations. In the time period where 3 generations is what it can take for a round trip on a courier, easy to do a cross-pollination like this. So the lost city became legend, and then grander and more. Why was it lost? Oh, it was lost because it was cursed by the gods. Blah 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 blah. How was it lost? How did the gods do it? Oh, they brought a great wall of sand from the desert like a tidal wave. No, it was just a sandstorm for like 10 years. Because at this point in history is when the Sahara Desert was having its final expansion before what we now know as the anthropogenic expansion of modern times since the Industrial Revolution. Despy, you're getting quiet. Am I boring you with my National Geographic shit? Okay, talk about trains. I'm kidding.
I would be commenting more, except the dog is needing to go outside, so I was over there doing that. But yeah, like it makes sense. Like this is a really common thing in like mytho history sort of stuff, where people will give supernatural or mythological explanations to otherwise unexplainable natural phenomenon. So the idea of a sandstorm being described as a wall of sand burying a city makes perfect sense.
Yeah, some of the legends basically describe Tunis like a sand version of Pompeii, where people were like locked in their beds and fucking trapped at their dinner tables and all kinds of weird shit. It was silly, but
yeah, or like another version, or a desert sand version of Atlantis. Instead of being sunk to the bottom of the sea, it's buried in sand.
Yeah, Rich, you look like you were about to say something.
I was just going to say I'm about to get ready to go, so I'm not quite finished with the apparatus, but I've done most of Sayer's commentary and all of Moose's commentary, so it's almost done.
You're always distracted doing that during the show. You gotta
I know. I'm going to do it before the show. I need to get. I've been insanely busy this semester.
I know. I've been busy as heck too. That's why the numbers started screwing up on this, because I'm like, crap, they don't line up, and I don't have time to line them up.
Yeah.
Because
if you give me edit access, I'll take care of at least the lines, if not the commentary. That way you can focus more on. Do you not have
edit access? I thought
I only have comment access.
Oh, no.
I requested edit, so you can give it to me. But yeah, I can take care of the next couple of cantos, at least in terms of the content, if not the commentary.
What I was about to say is,
it takes a lot of editing, just to warn you.
If I bring this into the Discord, we can read it here. Whether you do it before or after is immaterial to me. It's the during that I want to brain you for on occasion, where you're like, wait, where are we? Oh, I was reading this other part.
But then I see some footnotes while I'm doing it, and then
I know, which is why I don't get on you too much until after, when I can just give you shit.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do the rest of Sayers tonight, but and then I'll do. I'll try to do next week's earlier.
Yeah, and we will be back next week. There won't be another hiatus, at least for a little while. That being said, this is going to be a long ongoing project for anybody who's watching. I do hope you keep coming back. I see the views. Unfortunately, I'm not big enough to get the actual access to usernames yet. To see who's all the followers and all that, but thank you for those of you who are here, and the seemingly 14 people a week who consistently watch the episodes. So thank you for that. Honestly. For all I know, it's one person watching it over and over and over again, and if that's all it is, I still thank them because I'm glad that we're being helpful or entertaining. Although I prefer to be helpful.
And then entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, entertaining is a plus, but I'll take it. But the whole point of this is to be educational without the formality of a classroom or some of these other digital lecture things I've seen where it's all dry and scripted and oh god, it's just who can learn from that crap? It's like it takes a particularly good science communicator or historical communicator to actually write a script like that would be effective for that. It's not just knowing the information. It is effectively being able to communicate it in a way that is conducive to the majority, whereas this kind of live commentary is conducive in general because there's back and forth. You're seeing the learning process where we may stop on one point because it doesn't click with us. It may click with you. We may never know it, but you do. And all of that's cut out of an edited scripted video. And thankfully I have 2 teachers and 2 scientists here. Overlap on both groups that help with that. So, because you guys have literal training on education communication, which is something that is a dying art on, unfortunately.
No, it's okay. I heard from somebody in a VC a couple days ago that because they have a degree in mathematics, that they can teach mathematics to their children.
I mean, to their children, maybe. To all children, I said maybe. I said maybe.
Yeah, I've got to say, I rely on the stuff I learned, like in education classes, way more than I do in anything I learned in speech and debate classes, like in terms of speaking. In fact, like the more you know, the worse of a teacher you can be, unless you become very aware of the techniques to communicate with people who don't have the schemata you do. We all have a tendency to think that other people know what we know. And that's what makes it very difficult to teach unless you are trained in what to do for that. And I didn't think that at all. I remember when I was taking my education classes, I remember thinking that like it was the least important thing that I would study. Like, they're teaching you how to teach. Like it sounds really dumb. And then you take the classes and you're like, oh shit. Or you go into a classroom as a student teacher, not taking that material seriously, and you just start teaching just from the knowledge base that you have as a subject matter expert instead of as a teacher. And you find out, oh, no one's learning anything I'm saying. They're not absorbing any of it. And then you're like, okay, all right, now I get it.
Now, I know I can be an effective teacher for some, and the reason I know this is because when I was in school, already skipping grades and that shit, my teacher, specifically my algebra teacher, we had block scheduling at the time. My algebra teacher would drone on for 45 minutes and then give us the remaining 45 minutes to do work. As soon as she got done talking, half the class came to my desk and said, "Tell me what you just said." So I know I can teach math to a point. I know I'm an effective communicator in certain aspects. I also know I am overly pedantic, highly finited, which turns certain students off and doesn't help them. So like I would have to be like a tutor style instructor as opposed to a in person like class teacher, at least under current structure. Like without like greater like diversity of like class structure, there's no way that I could be an effective teacher in current system. That being said, I can help with this stuff because, first of all, university's already more informal. Second of all, like, I like this shit. It's fun. And hopefully, as you guys are reading and watching this stuff, even if you're not having fun, you can laugh along with us at the jokes and have fun with that stuff. Because, I'm sorry you're having to drag through this shit. It ain't fucking light material. I'm glad you're reading it because I think it will be helpful to you. But if you're not enjoying it, hopefully we can bring some levity. Because let's be honest,
and I will keep bringing up the same tropes from the beginning.
I know
until the end.
I know. That's why when I accidentally chose Lamentation, it was just like, oh, this is dead. It was written.
No, it was more along the lines as like you had me read first, and then it was the second. All right, I'll read this one here, and I'm like, oh well, I
Well,
see exactly why you want to read this one because you like jumped on it like the second after.
but that was because we had went off on a tangent. And I was like, "Shit, let's get back on."
Right.
And then you pointed it out, and I'm like, "Well, shit, now it looks bad." Okay, it was destined. Yeah, this is my point. Like, we're all nerds. We all have fun reading this stuff. We all like. I have reread Dante's Inferno, just those 33 cantos, at least a dozen times before we started the first one. I had not touched this book in 20 years before that. There's so much to go through. It is the only thing I could give you like worse would be James Joyce. Don't get me wrong, phenomenal author, but very heavy shit. And if you haven't got to that section of literature class and you see him in your syllabus, I'm sorry. Maybe we'll do a section on that in the future if I can get enough people.
I love Joyce.
Yeah, but definitely not light reading. Or Graham Greene. Jesus Christ, there's another one from not light reading at all.
Yeah. Green's worse than Joyce on that score.
They're just very heavy things that a lot of people don't really think about, and these people just like make it the highlight, man. It's wild that they do it so well too. That's why both Joyce and Green and
Okay, I'm switching
Wilde,
the phone. I can hear
Yep.
you, but I won't be talking.
Yep. But this is why when I gave out the reading list to our fellow acquaintance Vidge, Joyce, Wilde, Green, and Dickens were on there, because you're talking about like four people who have very, very intimate understandings of politics, social structures, and all this, who are also phenomenal writers and put everything of their knowledge synthesized into their stories. You don't have to read dry theory books, but when you don't read dry theory books, it's where you read heavy fiction and it's gonna fuck you up. I'm sorry, it's a trade-off you get. You either read dry or you read shit that's gonna give you emotional damage. And Despy isn't really vociferously advocating for it, but I know he knows what I'm talking about because I see that dead look in his eye. He's like, fucking Beowulf.
Yeah. No, for me, it's more like trying to read Chomsky. Reading Chomsky is a chore.
I'm a fucking leftist, and he's a chore for me. Don't even fucking shit me started on what it must be like for you, who's a moderate. Must be like nails on a chalk.
About his language.
Yeah,
his language, like second language stuff. Not
yeah. I know. I like what he's saying, and it bothers me. If you don't like what he's saying, it's got to be even worse.
Yeah.
That was my point. I'm a fan, and I can't stand his writing style. It's like, Deleuze. Deleuze is fucking absolute genius, but I would not recommend that reading to anyone. It's so hard. It's so fucking heavy. It is, like you were talking about, like multiple layers of complexity that you have to keep track of at all times, or else you are going to be lost. Like, there's certain things that's just the way it is. So, in those cases, when I'm trying to teach somebody a lesson, I give them fiction writers who are going to give them emotional damage of a whole different level. Instead of being bored to tears, they're going to be brought to tears by emotional scenes that will fuck you up. And if you think that you can't cry reading a book, you haven't read the right books yet. Trust me.
Now,
what was that, Rich?
I'm the one who can't.
You're cutting out, so get closer to your mic a little bit.
I'm the one who couldn't stand.
Okay, you couldn't stand, and then it cut out again. I don't know what's going on with your mic.
I'll type it.
Okay. Side chat. Now, oh, yeah, no, oh God, we were talking about Graham Greene. Oh, Chomsky. Yeah, Chomsky is oh, went through Graham Greene, James Joyce, Oscar Wilde, Dickens. Who else did we mention, Despy? Sorry, the interruption kind of reset my brain. Oh, Beowulf. That was the other one I mentioned. I mean, Rich, I'm a fan of Beowulf, and Beowulf is tough to read, man. Like, this is just because I like it doesn't mean I'm giving it chops it doesn't deserve. That shit is fucking goddamn torture to read, especially if you have never touched fucking Old or Middle English before. And that's not even the language it was written in. That's just the first language it was translated in that you might understand. It was technically, if I remember correctly, written in Welsh. I'd have to look it up. Actually, I will. Fuck it.
Are we still live?
Yep. Late West Saxon, so before Old English. It's technically predates Old English. Well, okay. That is, at least in my opinion, the more modern English translation that causes that issue. When you read it in the Old and Middle English versions, it's not effortless. It's like he gets fucked up in every fight. He just wins every fight. He never loses. The swimming across the ocean is the part that always made me go, "What the fuck?" Because at least when you read it in the Old and Middle English, he does get like wounded in fights. He ends up with scars and stuff like this. He just never loses the fight. In my opinion, Hercules or Heracles, depending on how we're gonna use the name, far more effortlessly got through his 12 labors than fucking Beowulf did. And I think it was 21 labors for Beowulf. I'd have to look that up, but I fucking out. If we decide to do Beowulf, I apologize in advance, chat. It's the swimming portion that bothers me, because while it was a practice in the sagas to exaggerate heavily, um, the original swimming across blank, they were swimming across fjords that sometimes could be hundreds of miles across at certain sections. Um, Already an insane feat. At the time period when this was written, would have been before the Saxons had traveled the ice wall edge of the northern glaciation to get to North America. So it would have just been a legend. The idea of swimming across an ocean was certain death to them, and that's why that was the part that always got me like weird, because you always expect the hero to win the fight with the monster, but swimming across a fucking ocean, like, dude, you're human. Like, I get it, humans can do some crazy shit, but it's a fucking ocean. They're fucking big. Like, the 100 miles that they talk about in some of the sagas for some of the Vikings is already crazy enough when you're talking ice cold water. Now you're talking the fucking North Atlantic? Get the fuck out of here. The human body cannot survive that. No human body could survive that. Not even if we fucking laced ourselves up in a seal wet skin suit could we survive that. You know, the monster is the least thing, because at least to me, as with most mythologies, the monster was never a monster. The monster was always some manifestation of some negative aspect of society. The hydras need to consume. The bulls need to rage. The lions need to protect. So on, so forth. That became a reductio ad absurdum, and therefore the monstrous version of. Let's see this. Yeah, I got rid of in OBS, I got rid of the scene and preview from studio mode thing, because, like, honestly, that crap was just annoying. It's easy to misclick the button and it not transfer. So now I have it on the retro styles. So it requires a little bit of live manipulation at times, but much easier. Well, okay, they're not doing Uncle Roger impersonations. They're doing Stephen Yee impersonations. Stephen Yee has appeared on Uncle Roger's, yes, and Uncle Roger constantly uses the clip of Stephen Yee doing the Chinese phonetics.
Emotional damage.
Yeah. Emotional damage. Yeah. Like, I love the guy, but that is so ubiquitous that, like, everybody uses that. Like, the only reason I don't do crap like that is because, like, honestly, that's not the shtick for an education channel. Otherwise, like, when I said it, that thought went through my head too. The only difference is I was seeing Stephen Yee's original. And yes, for those of you in chat, even us old people know this shit. No, not only Asians, also people who lived in Asia, which both me and Despy qualify. He still does. I am not gonna get canceled for recreating fucking Stephen Yee's meme, trust me. Nobody's gonna give a rat's ass. That'd be like somebody getting upset with me for recreating the Fluffy joke about Krispy Kremes and getting pulled over by cops. Like, nobody would give a rat's ass. I'm glad somebody laughed at that more than just the grin I got from Despy. Glad we got one Fluffy fan in here.
Yes, I've been a long-time fan of Gabriel Iglesias.
Oh yeah, Fluffy's the shit. Like, I know his name's Gabriel. I still can't call him Gabriel because he is Fluffy and his kid is Baby Fluff, according to Snoop Dogg. And if you haven't seen that interview, I highly recommend it. It is quite literally the first time anywhere publicly that Gabriel Iglesias got high. I'll do the accent because I know the phonemes, but yeah, I get you. coming out of you, it'd look a little weird. Although it would be, even though you don't speak the language, I'm sure you could pull off the Afrikaans accent, and that would freak your students out once in a while. Like I said, I know you've told me you don't speak the language, but I'm pretty sure you could pull off the accent because you heard it enough as a kid.
Find whichever kid in the classroom does the best Stephen He, okay? And then whenever you need to say emotional damage, that kid knows that you point to them and then they say the term.
Okay. Well, that would be funny. Well, that would be funny. I see litigation in our future if this were to actually become a practice. Because, well, I mean, especially living in our litigious society. But also, like...
Just remember, kids, you don't want to do any of this unless you want to get...
Yeah, and I'm just going to sit here and turn this this handle on this organ grinder. Yeah, and that was kind of my point. I cannot see this going over well with certain parents. The kids would all love it. The parents would be the problem. Like if I were to do this with my grandkids, they'd instantly, like, first of all, be shocked that I knew what the hell I was talking about on the subject. Second of all, once they got into it, they'd love it. Like, when they figured out that Papa did frickin' like Rainbow Six and Apex Legends and Hunt Showdown, they're like, wait, what? Wait, what? You're Platt? What? You're old? How, what? It blew their mind.
You should show them the videos of that grandpa sniper.
Well, one of the like solo player games that I play a lot are sniper games, like the Sniper Elite franchise or Sniper Ghost Warrior franchise, and they've seen me basically run up, all my stamina gone, no like shot assist, take a shot from that like drop instantly into a prone position, take a shot from 1,000 meters, get up, start running. Before the bullets hit, I'm running again. And they're like, how do you know you hit them? I'm like, I just know.
Yeah. So, what is it? I don't mean to change the subject, but
No, you're good.
I had something funny happened the other day, and I thought that I know that you get it because you're a camera person. So, I have a guy in our group that was fighting a Titan, which is this massive alien ship-like thing that you fight, where there's all these other aliens that are basically attacking you in a spaceship. And he decided with his group, because this thing is so cool, that he was going to take a screenshot while he was playing, like a free camera screenshot. While he was taking his screenshot, his ship got exploded. So, in our group, we give out call signs. So whenever you do something insanely cool or insanely stupid, you get a call sign. So we're trying to decide on what call sign to give this guy. And everybody's going through like pop shot or like what is it? Snapshot.
No, scream shot.
Yeah.
Because he screamed after he looked at that screenshot.
Right. Right. No, I found one that's even better.
Uh-oh.
His call sign should be Explosure.
Overexposure.
Overexposure.
Yeah. You got to make it real obvious that you're making the pun on the camera trick. Yeah. And because it's his ship, overexposure makes it even funnier.
Yeah.
I still think scream shot's more accurate, because I guarantee you, if you ask him, did you scream when you looked at the screenshot and realized what happened? He's gonna say yes. And therefore scream shot will just twist the knife every time. And that's the whole point. It's just a fun thing to do in our group. Yeah. I know, yeah, that's the whole fun. It twists the knife, and that's when he goes, yeah, fuck you guys. I gotta get a different call sign. And he goes to try and do something else cool. I mean, at least that's the way I'd take it, because, I mean, you're basically doing military stuff. That's how military treat each other. Good-natured ribbing is never meant to offend. It's always meant to push you to excel. Sometimes it's mean.
I will say this. We normally reserve this for like something really stupid that you did like in game. I've been playing with this group for 3 years, do moderation and everything, and I have escaped getting a call sign.
Fair enough. And yeah, Rich, that 100%. You don't want to tell the parents. I'm with you on that one, because when it comes down to it, as I think we have said during one of these previous live streams, but if not, we'll just go over it again. Parents are the last fucking people who belong deciding what their kids are educated on. They always get in the fucking way. They screw shit up. They have fucking ulterior motives that is not about education. And that's not necessarily saying that nefarious ulterior motives, but those biases come into play. Oh, I want my kid to do this. I want my kid to be a doctor. I want this. I want that. Unfortunately, that leads to a lot of fucking dumb decisions by parents. And that's me. You know, I know you're a teacher in Japan, so you have to face this a little less. But, you've heard horror stories from family members, or from fellow...
Sure about that?
The part I'm talking about, probably.
Yeah.
How many groups of parents have come in and said your tests are too hard?
Plenty. As a matter of fact, there's
Really? That actually surprises me.
No. Like there are parents that'll come in, especially if they have a kid that's going they want to go to like a particular school or whatnot, and the kid isn't getting like straight A's throughout the whole class. The teacher or the parents will literally come in and contest questions on the test.
Okay, I didn't realize it had gotten that bad. American Affiliate fucked you guys up too. But no, that being said, yeah, it's just like, that's stupid. That's, if your kid, forgive me, and this is, maybe this is unkind because of my experience with school, but if your kid is not passing the test with an A, you should not be arguing with your kid or the teacher. You should be getting them a tutor or doing it your damn self. Because part of this comes on you as well as the student and the teacher, and all of that comes into play. And if you aren't doing your part, arguing isn't fixing it, asshole.
Yeah. As I've said multiple times to multiple people, and I think I've said it to every single person inside this call here, the longer I spend in education, the more technocracy looks inviting.
True. And Rich, I get what you're saying, but you're a masochist. You may always win, but you're like, I love when parents contest questions on the test. Because...
Well, no, read what he said after.
Because I always win, yeah. Because I know him. He is a debate guy dealing with fucking non-educated parents on debate. Of course he wins every one. If I tied somebody's hand behind their back, I'd outcook them too every time. Like, it's an unfair advantage. I don't care that he wins every time. If he lost some, I'd be worried.
Of course you're going to win in a battle.
No, but I think that's why he's saying he enjoys it. I think that's why he's saying he enjoys it. He enjoys it because he wins every time.
I know, but he's also a masochist who's like, ha ha ha, I get to fight again. Like,
I mean, yes, he's a debate coach who's addicted to debate. This is unsurprising.
Uh-oh, we got a voice message. And nothing.
Garbly
he may have just
No, it is what it is, because here's the thing. We're all contentious. We all like debate. We all like arguing and fighting. The slight difference between the four of us here and the majority of the rest of the areas that we frequent, or in my case used to frequent, we actually want substance. We can argue and curse and scream at the top of our lungs. The difference is we're yelling about studies, not feelings. We're arguing about, here's this evidence, not here's this thing I thought about once because I got high. Like, it's... Sorry, I'm so sick of the bong rip fucking theologian and debaters. It just drives me insane. And that's coming from somebody who's literally high all the time. Yet, I don't ever fall into those tropes. It's like, yeah, it's fun to think about when you're high. It's not fun to actually try and act like it's real. That makes you dumb.
I need to go. I will talk to you all later.
Yeah. 1 a.m. for you right now?
Midnight.
Okay, 1 hour. Damn it, I'm still not off from where I was in Florida. I had to look over and I'm like, oh yeah. And I forget that I had set my clock an hour ahead to Florida time before I left for Florida. Anyways, sleep well, my friend.
Yep. Take care, all. See you. Bye.
And that's so I could... And we lost Rich, too. But that's so I could sync up my phone and my computer so that all the alerts would come in real time rather than getting delays. Oh. But on that note, as we lost two of our participants, and it'll probably just be me and Ancom bullshitting for a few more minutes before he takes off, that concludes our stream for the week, and we will catch you next week when we pull up Canto 15. See you next time. And we're on. Thanks for watching the screen. No, you're fine. Ugh. It is what it is. I'm on, and it's on the thanks for watching the screen.
Taglina, Father, she's selling our shirt.